a car enthusiast, but specifically an American car enthusiast, where you stick that chest out a little bit and you're like,
we own this. This is ours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that pride of like, oh, yeah, I'll do some cool shit, but look what we just did.
What's the pressure like carrying that on your shoulders that you're representing? You're representing America, basically, with America's supercar. Like, you better step up to the plate and knock this thing out of the park.
Pontiac Aztec.
Mm-hmm. I was involved with
that. I didn't
that
mean,
always comes up.
No offense to Ralph that, like, you know.
Oh, no, we have them all.
Said, you know, shit about your C8, but I won't bring that up.
Wow. Okay. Everybody has a right to their opinion.
I've never owned a Corvette, right? I've driven a shit ton of them, but I've never went and purchased a Corvette. And now it's kind of like, yeah, America. Yeah, it's mid-engine. It's flat plane crank. It sounds awesome. It's got one of the best DTC transmissions out there. You know, all those things where you're like, hell yeah.
It's time to go mid-engine with the Corvette.
He just says it like that.
Yeah.
No, there's no warning that's coming. That's a surprise.
Can you imagine how profound that is?
Welcome everybody back to another edition of Oil and Whiskey. First episode back from the SEMA show. So everybody's gonna have to bear with us. We left Chicago to go to the SEMA show. It's three of us. There was three. We came back from the SEMA show. It's two.
We lost one.
We've lost one. Yep. But filling in. Hopefully we'll just do this all the time. Jeremy doesn't have to do it. We'll just have Tom. It'll be Phil, Josh, and Tom. So Tom Peters, Adrienne's father. This works out so good because this will be the next episode. When you're listening to this, the previous episode that you just listened to was your episode. So timing wise, sometimes those things just work out great. Yeah. You conned them into coming out, right? You didn't tell them they were doing a podcast.
They won't come to visit me, but they'll come to record a podcast with you guys.
Oh boy.
Well, I appreciate it. The good part is, though, you told so many great stories. We got to know y'all's journey, how you got into it. So, like, the introduction's done. Now we just get to have a conversation. That's the good part. We don't have to spend the first 30 minutes of, like, so, like, how did you get your start? Like, what'd you get in cars? We know that. Like,
good.
So now we can just rock and roll into the cool stuff. Super appreciative of you coming out. We've got lots of questions, so many things that we would like to get into. So awesome. We did a little tour around the shop. You saw what we do.
Amazing place. And, you know, it's full of soul and just beautiful vehicles.
I appreciate
it. A lot of art.
It's no General Motors, but we try.
Well, you know what?
Inspired by.
Yeah.
There are many people, men and women within that company that have that same level of passion, and they fully understand what you guys are doing. And there's a little bit of that, at least in the cars that I've been involved with. There's a little, if not a lot, of what goes on down there.
Well, Adrienne, just to kick it off, Adrienne kind of told a little bit of the story. I've read some articles as well. You've given a lot of these interviews. There's a lot of information to be found out there about you. I don't know how much of it's true, but I've read it. We heard you got the job, your dream job. Mm-hmm. You left for this fine lady here.
I did.
And I can't say that I would have done the same thing for my wife. She doesn't listen to this, so it's fine. I can say that.
Okay.
Everything worked out. You get back. Yeah. When you're walking into that place and you kind of know now it's set, right? She's there with you. Everything's kind of set up. Mm-hmm. What is going through your mind first? What do I get to work on? Or how do I leave my mark? Or how do I make somebody happy? Or what?
And you're talking about after I left Texas Instruments,
yep.
returned to Detroit.
You're back to Detroit.
After I got a letter from Chuck Jordan.
Yep.
Which is pretty amazing.
That's just out of the blue?
No, because when I went up to his office and told him I was going to leave, I told him the story. I said, I got gas in my veins. You find 2 openings, we'll come back in a heartbeat. And, Chuck was he was Chuck Jordan. He was kind of especially for a young designer, was very intimidating, very iconic. You're up in this wood office and you think about the history in that room. And so I'm just some kid going up there and I'm going to quit. He hired me. But, I don't know if I had vision or not, but I knew in my heart what I wanted to do, and that was the right thing. I didn't think twice about it. I found out years later, a lot of years later, that my mother was really mad about that. She gave her an earful, and she didn't share that with me. But at any rate, so got a letter from Chuck. I kind of expected it. It was a good time to go. We had great experience there with TI. A designer should be able to design anything. And I was just excited about. I mean, we were involved with new technology, synthesized speech, speech to text, all this stuff, and we worked with high-end technology. We walked into a building where there were the people in the glass booths working on the chips and all that, and they call them the bunny suits. In this little corner, that one of our mentors, Gene Sulik, opened up consumer products in this super high-tech environment. And so he was an absolute genius and one of the people that we really look up to in terms of having the strength to forge ahead with a vision and implement it. And he did that because up to that point, really, TI did, the calculators, and they did a lot of stuff for the military.
It's interesting you say that you, as a designer, you should be able to design anything. Mm-hmm. So, passion fuels that design.
Yep.
So where do you start filling up the tank with passion on something that you probably weren't super passionate about before to be able to design it?
I think you look for an opportunity to create something new to in an artistic way. And since they're objects, whether it's a house or a car, furniture, whatever, you just get inspired by something about it. If someone's asked you to design something or something you volunteer, something you're attracted to that you want to design, So that's where it starts. And I think that's getting back to your original question. When we walked in together at GM Design, after having had that absolute wonderful experience, I got to work with Steven Spielberg.
Oh, wow.
On E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
I didn't know that.
With Amblin. Yeah, we were in there. Kathleen Kennedy.
You're going to learn so much by the time this is
really
over.
am.
I got to meet Kathleen Kennedy, who now, all of the Star Trek movies, the Star Wars,
Wow.
canon, all those. An amazing person. And she gave me some good advice and some opportunity, which I was too stupid to pay attention to, Otherwise, I might not have done cars. But at any rate, it was a wonderful experience. I could talk about a lot of other ones too, but that was a lot packed into 2 years in the middle of Texas. Lubbock, Texas is where we were. You have to take a space shuttle to get there. But at any rate, so back to Detroit. Yeah, walking in that building with Carolyn in the early 80s, in 1982. And I went into the advanced design, and Carolyn, you went into Cadillac right away or Oldsmobile? Oldsmobile. And, it was, back then it was a totally different environment now. But, going to work with soon to be my wife, and it was big enough to where we didn't have to see each other 24 hours a day, although we were very close. We'd come home from work and we'd both fall asleep on the living room floor, and then wake up about 8 or 9 and fix dinner every day, just about. I remember that.
So you're coming in 82?
Yes.
So there's
hired in 80, worked for TI for 2 years, and then that's when we were invited back.
So there's rumblings in the company about this Saturn deal then in 82.
Yeah, you have to talk to Carol about that. She experienced that whole thing. That was, from my perspective, that was a wild ride. It was a total invention of a culture.
That's what
within and without.
That
amazing.
Was why I would be wild. Like you coming in, right? And you're like, finally this is happening. Adrienne talked about, your inspiration. We even talked about it on the floor about, Ed Big Daddy Roth and the hot rods and stuff like that. And you've got all these ideas. Like, we're General Motors. We're big. And then you hear about like Saturn's going to happen, right? Saturn, the car, and their idea. And you're like, what in the crap is going on with that?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. If you think about it, there was a lot swirling around, and, Japanese products were really coming up big, and General Motors needed us to figure out a way to respond to that. And, it isn't just about product. It's about how they're presented, the customer interface, who are the customers. It was an evolving, total new automotive customer landscape. And I can only surmise of as to how that all came about and transpired. But it was amazing that they invented a company and built products, automotive products. And I mean, you just can't overestimate what it takes to put out a vehicle like that.
Right.
A new vehicle, a brand new vehicle.
Yeah, they went from ideation to building a car in like 6-7 years.
Yeah, and it was, the whole new mindset of all the employees as well. They're almost they wanted the company to be totally separate from the rest of the organization so that you would create a product that was incredibly unique.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also probably keep all your core GM employees so they don't have to work on it. Let's hire some new guys for that.
Well, let me tell you, I think at the time, it was an exciting opportunity for adventure. And to have a company that could actually provide the resources economically or people to do this from scratch, pretty amazing when you think of it, I mean, first one comes to mind maybe is Tesla. It was that kind of mindset. It was not only product, but it was cultural. And so, I mean, it was like a space program, at least for General Motors. It was something that was totally new, and you could invent everything.
So you're probably not tied down to what has been.
No,
or
they didn't
off
want
an old
that.
model
In
or
fact,
an old
that
platform.
was, from what I could, and again, I'm speaking as an observer.
What's the first project you get tasked on?
I went to in the advanced studios, which is where they usually at that time put the new hires, because you get a taste for the organization. You have more freedom, more flexibility, and so I was there for a couple of years, working for a design chief named Alan Young, and these guys are chiefs that maybe were involved with Corvette or other studios, Cadillac, whatever. And when promoted, they would run. I think we had 6 advanced studios at the time, totally different environments. And first product we worked on was, believe it or not, an electric car, some electric cars.
That was back in the 80s?
Yep.
Was that the
yeah.
EV one?
No, it was precursor to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, General Motors has been involved with electric cars quite some time. As far as I can go back, I mean, they didn't you have to help me with that. Oldsmobile, somebody did an all-electric car, like the early 1900s. I could be totally wrong with that, but wrong about that. But I know they worked on them in the late 50s and early 60s.
You'd think they would have learned by now. They've been trying it for that long.
Yeah.
I'm talking about all the OEs, not just General Motors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are certain givens with electric, but I mean, as we progress, obviously technology enables you, and
Yep.
you can push the envelope.
What was the model that you've said that there was a model that you created that got you into the Corvette studio?
Yeah, that was I worked actually in 2 advanced studios. That was Advanced 1. I went into Advanced 3 and worked for a chief named Emil Zawada. And sometimes those advanced studios would be given assignments, like in the previous one I mentioned, electric vehicle, an electric sedan, an electric luxury car. And then sometimes they'll say, they kind of leave them alone, and you invent your own projects. And we wanted to do super futuristic sports cars, 2-place sports cars, and incredible talent in those rooms. Some were kind of the more seasoned guys that were a little bit older, that have gone through and they come back around and didn't want to get involved with the rigors of a production studio, so they go in advanced. And then that's where they bring the young folk, the young guys in, young men and women to kind of begin their career. But at any rate, we got to do these free thinking kind of design explorations of sports cars, and in fact turning into kind of into a competition between the then assistant chief designer Jim Beek and myself. We just started sketching and got to a point where we were going home sketching, come back and putting sketches on the walls, trying to kind of outdo each other. You got the young kid and then the seasoned guy. We're going back and forth, and we ended up picking some of the designs. And the thing I love to acknowledge all the time throughout my entire career, and way before I got there, we talked about some of the cars downstairs on the floor, like one was the GTO. The sculpting, the sculptors, unbelievable talent. I like to say you're usually born with a talent, and school can kind of pull it out and help you develop techniques and all that. But I think you're born with talent, and some people are extraordinarily gifted in that way. And I feel personally, and I'm sure many other folks would agree, that in the design field, when you come to understand the level of sculpting talent, I would always say, it's just a pretty sketch till sculptors get a hold of it.
I was going to ask you about that.
You guys are you guys understand that here, and I was experienced solid talent. I'm not taking anything away from anyone, but there are a few individuals there. In the course of my career, there were probably 5 individuals that I can count on my hand that had this stratospheric, like Jimi Hendrix kind of talent, And when you see someone working in clay, taking your sketch and turning into this unbelievably beautiful sculpture, it hits you how magic that is. And so when you come out of school, like at school, you do everything. You sketch, you got to do the clay models, you got to do the templates. Nowadays it's digital, of course.
Right.
But you do everything, and then it's quite frustrating when you go into an environment where you sketch and the sculptors will interpret that. You're like, you can't. I'll do it. You just,
right.
It's like, how can it, someone love your baby like you do, And so, anyways, there was one in particular that I remember that I first realized that it was an epiphany. His name was Fred Hochschild, big guy, and he took my sketch and turned it into something that was just unbelievable. Anyway, so that, and what happens is in advanced areas or anywhere throughout the building, if you do a kind of profound model or a design theme, the building was shaped like an H, and the first floor were the advanced studios and truck. Why truck was down there, I think it's because the vehicles were so big, because the models were quite heavy, and you take them out in the patio with a kind of a forklift kind of mover. So that's why they're on the first floor. And the second floor was all production studios. So and then off the production wing is a long hallway, goes by the library, goes by the color studio, and then that's where the executive offices are, where the VP sits, and the executive directors, and all the mahogany row, for lack of a better description. So right at that intersection where that corridor comes from Mahogany Row to the production studios is called Hollywood and Vine. That's what they named it. So over the years, ever since that building was done in 1955, I think it opened, it was a special hallowed place. So if someone did a really cool design, model, or artwork, they'd set up a display there. And so just imagine how special that would be if something that you did was selected to go up there. And everybody in the corporation, you don't know who's coming through there. It could be the president of the United States, could be, engineering, marketing, whatever. So Chuck Jordan said, "Hey, put that up on the floor, the model with a couple of sketches."
Is it just clay, or is it wrapped too?
Well, clay and had dye knockout. So
okay.
It was painted. So
okay.
it was shiny. I think I sent you guys a picture of that or whatever. But
is this Cadillac?
No.
Okay. All right.
It was kind of a non-brand, but we always have Corvette in mind. when as a kid. I don't know if there's a picture of it in there, but Jerry Palmer, who was the chief of the Corvette Chevy 3 studio, which is legendary. I don't know if you can put like a tile up there or like a spreadsheet of all the images.
Yeah.
Yeah, grid view. Yeah.
Yeah, it's up there on the right.
Yeah. At any rate, he'd walk by and saw it and said, "I want that kid in the studio." I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what he said, but before that model really got me up into. Let's see, keep scrolling there. Is it okay for me to talk about this here?
Yeah.
You guys can edit all that out.
No, we're good.
Okay. Right there. There it is. That's the model. So at the time, if you think about this in early 80s, where everything was square. All the cars were square, and I always had the mindset, if everybody's turning right, I'm going to turn left. So I thought, well, I'm going to do something very flowing and sculptural, not knowing that, how what effect that would have within the corporation, I think ultimately in the design world. But so Jerry had seen this display in the hallway and invited me to come up to join the Chevy 3 studio, and that's where they did the Camaro, the Corvette at the time. And that was kind of a wild studio compared to the rest. There were kind of, gunslingers in there and super talent. So I went in there as a kid and was just in awe, because again, I don't know if Adrienne told you the story, but I mean, I remember everybody remembers when they saw their first Corvette, right? So that took me right back, because when I was a kid, I had no idea where these cars came from.
Right.
So, and I only came upon design by accident. Actually, I was going to be an illustrator, a fine artist, and I came across an Art Center catalog in a class one day, and it was an epiphany, because in there I saw industrial design, examples of industrial design, including cars. And then I go back and look further, and who's in the faculty, and I see names like Harry Bradley. I don't know if you know that name or not.
No.
Super hot rod. You can Google his name, just look up Harry Bradley artwork. We talked about Ed Big Daddy Roth, but Harry Bradley was a designer who worked for General Motors. Then he quit and went off and became had his own design business. And one of the things he's famous for, although he was a landmark LA hot rodder, he worked for Mattel. It's hired by Mattel. He did the first set of Hot Wheels.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just an incredible designer,
Wow.
incredible artist. He was one of the faculty for Art Center, and I knew right then, just like I said, I was going to quit GM and go to Texas Instruments to be with Carolyn. I knew right then. I sold up my tools. My buddies, when I put an engine, that's a whole nother story together in our carport.
We haven't even gotten.
Yeah. Where we honed out the cylinder. Well, I'll listen to the story. So I bolted it to California and
In your Galaxy.
in my Galaxy 500 with flames on it, inspired by.
That was your first flame job, wasn't it?
painted with model paint. So I was inspired by California Kid, the movie.
Oh. Yep.
What year? What was it? A 33, 32? What was that, Rod? That was
33.
33. Yeah. It's like flames. Again.
What year Galaxy?
68. Yeah, 2-door. That's what I had to work with, dude.
Hey, it was a hot car.
Is that the fastback?
No, it wasn't the XL. The XL is really cool. The hidden headlamps. That's a cool car.
Yeah.
No, this was just a 2-door. It was a 2-door. And a lot of things happened with that car. Yeah. In Louisiana, you can just imagine. But
Yeah,
at any
I
rate,
can.
yeah. There's some other stories there too. But so bolted out there, and to make it from that, and when I saw my first Stingray when I was in third grade, getting off the school bus, it was like a spaceship landed. We get off the bus every day and wait for that. It was like the rich kid and his dad was dropping him off. That's another story too. That's a really cool. That was a cool experience. Didn't know where that car came from. I guess I knew it was a Stingray.
Right.
And it was silver. Yeah. And want me to tell you that story
Yeah,
just a minute?
absolutely.
All right. So
Do you know who the kid was?
No, I think he was older.
Okay.
He was in third grade. And but I remember the number of the bus, 39. Third grade. Deep Haven grade school, Deep Haven, Minnesota. Lake Minnetonka, have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, well, a great place. I still go back and visit. I still have a Twins cap. But at any rate, wonderful people there. I like going back there at least once a year. But at any rate, so you show up in the morning, then he pulled up one morning, and a few of us kids were out there because we'd always wait for that car to show up. And looked inside, there's something different here. What is that? Well, we looked at closer, and you know how it has the twin cockpit theme, and where the radio's vertical, which that in itself was like, oh, as a kid. But in this case, it was a little TV tube, a little cathode ray tube right between. We're talking 1963 now. Yeah.
This dude's a billionaire.
I don't know. So
came from the future.
So that's a different. So he'd show up in the other regular. So he had not one but two silver Corvettes. One that had the CRT tube in it. So and then I remember one day he showed up in a silver Riviera.
Oh,
a silver one, which is the designer color. I mean, I know that now. That's kind of the color designers usually use because it shows form and it shows graphics. That's why you do that. So at any rate, so it's like, whoa, So I remember all that. So I look back to that story and think, and this is outside Minneapolis, so I'm thinking now, I'm putting the story together. He must have been some high-level executive for like Honeywell, who they did all that technology for military or whatever, and so he knew what was what in terms of design and what was cool, and those were his cars. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. So that that's what I remember going back. So take that and having that memory carry with you all the way through life up to that point, my young life. What was I, 25 or something like that? I don't know. To be invited into the studio, the actual floor space where that 63 was created with Bill Mitchell on the team.
That's surreal.
So I had no idea. And so I'm in there, I'm just like, it's hard to keep my mouth shut, And to have, Jerry and their legendary names like Randy Wittine, Roger Hewitt, these just phenomenally stratospheric design talent,
How do you hide your excitement, but also fit in? And
it's tough to hide, but they made the atmosphere incredibly energetic and electric, but they gave you so much freedom and made you feel comfortable. And just try stuff, kid. We're gonna sketch on this. Sketch around the. There was sketch in there on like I think in 83, 88. This is later. This is after Corvette Indie. 01 model. They just gave you the freedom. Like, when I came up, that's when we started working on the Corvette Indie concept car.
Okay.
And I was given that assignment.
So how does that get presented? That this is what we're doing. I'm interested in that story.
Okay. And again, I can talk from a young designer standpoint. In terms of how that came about from an organization, it was probably high-level VP, Bill Mitchell, probably Jerry Palmer, and then engineering, leadership. They wanted to do a car that highlighted the LT4 engine, the 32-valve Ilmor Indy engine. And if you remember, the model picture we showed had kind of that feel to it. Unbeknownst to me, they somehow liked that. So they brought me up, and we started sketching around that. And then
a lot of similarities into that first model.
There are some similarities. You can kind of see the philosophy there, right? And you remember now, everything was square. When we looked at the Pantera down, there was all that still 70s, 80s, Italian show cars. Everything was boxy. Giugiaro kind of.
Yeah, horizon lines splitting top and bottom.
Yeah. So I just did what I thought was cool, the neat shapes, having fun. And so one day I remember Chuck coming in, and there was somebody in the studio, and Chuck would say, "Who is this? He keeps coming in the studio and looking at this stuff. I didn't approve this." He had this specific way of talking. He had a finger always pointed. He was just awesome. He was iconic figure-wise, and again, just an amazing leader. But at any rate, So that was a decision. I remember he and Jerry had a discussion. We're going to put that car down in Studio X. We're going to do it down in the basement. And I didn't know what that was, but I found out what Studio X meant. There's a huge history of Studio X cars.
That's the first that when Bill Mitchell did the hidden studio. Is that the progression from there?
Yes. I don't know if Harley Earl did that or not. Again, I came in after Bill Mitchell, but he really revved it up.
He bankrolled the Speedster.
The Stingray, the silver Stingray.
Yep.
Yep, he did that, but there were Monzas down, a lot of Corvairs.
I remember hearing about they did a tool room, and then they found I think Harley's old file room, and they reconverted that into the hidden.
Yes, initially, but there are several Studio X's. One, and usually it was like the farthest away that they get from.
How do you keep
anybody.
that stuff a secret?
Because the chief has a key, and that time they were real keys, and some of them had like digital coding that you'd put in. I mean, mechanical digital coding. They had a keypad. But
you got to read some of these stories. Phil's a little out of it. There's these full-blown hidden studios, and the stories of like when Bill Mitchell comes in, he's wanting to do this. They've got a mandate of no more sports cars, right? You had in 55 you had there's 50, 60 people killed at Le Mans, and so American Motor AMA said like no American motor vehicle company is doing anything motorsports related.
Yep.
He's coming in, he's like, well, that's not going to happen. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to hide it, right? So he hides it. He's going to bankroll it himself because he believes in it. But they're looking at prints of the factory and like, find me some space that nobody knows about. So they find like hidden square footage that nobody, and lock it off, and they put a whole design team in there to build this thing. But this carries on, and that's why I was interested. Is like, is that happening now?
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
I've been in the course of my career. I've been in Studio X probably 4 or 5 times working on vehicles.
But like you said, Studio X is there's multiple of them. Studio X just means it's
there's multiple at a time. Usually one Studio X, and but it was different locations. When I came in there, it was the farthest room you get away from the main studio and administration building. And your earlier question about how they keep a secret. Number one, it's proximity. And number two, the VP had a key or a pass, and then just the team, and they were given strict instructions. Nobody's coming in here. So if someone mistakenly or found their way down, who are you? What are you doing here? Hit the road. In a nice way, sometimes not so nice, because again, some of the individuals that work in the studios are pretty bold personalities. And they don't mince words, they're straightforward. I'll tell you that, And but at any rate, so they moved the Corvette Indie down to the Studio X, and the reason why they do that is because you can imagine this hot, Corvette, and they've done other brands besides Corvette down there. Is because it's like no wine before it's time. Because corporation's so big and there's so many people coming out conducting business, from a design standpoint, sometimes you want to make a pure expression without interruptions, without input or whatever distractions, and you usually do it on a short time frame. But I want something in a month, full model. I want a month.
Wow.
Let's look at it. I'm using that as a hypothetical,
right.
But I could tell you about the Camaro. How that came about. That was sketched to driving up on that turntable in 6 months. And that came out Studio X.
The Gen 4?
No, the Gen 5.
Gen 5.
We brought it back.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow,
that's
fast.
a whole other story. Yeah.
But we'll get there. We got all night.
I've got, it's like I've been there almost 40 years, including my summer internship. I was honored and blessed to experience a lot of incredible talent and experiences.
It's amazing this progression. Just following along the story now, like you said, you did that first project, right? They put it out there. Then I'm seeing this, right?
Oh yeah.
But then I'm also in my mind, I'm putting together the progression of things that come after this, right? And I'm thinking about like so many that really changed GM's like philosophy design wise. There's so much of that shape, point, meet in the middle, right? But softened off, softened over the wheel wells in the front, softened over the wheel wells in the back. and that's like there's several generations of Firebird, right?
Oh,
there's
all
Grand
think about
Am, there's Grand Prix, it carries on.
Camaro, so much on that, the back glass, the spoiler,
Yes.
the nose, the windshield. It's
100%.
I had no idea, and I'll tell you, there are a lot of people involved with that. I mean, I did sketches and worked on it and all that too. But again, I mentioned some of the talent that was down there, and I owe so much. I mean, as a young, I don't know what I can sketch it, but I had no idea how to shape it. So you rely on these sculptors to take your idea and make it real like that. I mean, there are so many.
How detailed are the sketches that they're then sculpting off of?
I did. Well, there's some of my sketches in there kind of quite loose that I did for this. And they're able to take, and you know what? You're not sculpting specific surfaces. You're trying to capture a feeling. You're trying to capture a gesture. You guys know that with the rods you do. That's one of the early ones that I did there. You can see vents, and I knew it was going to be mid-engine. And at that time, I wasn't. Designers are inspired over the years, all the way back to the 30s, among other things, aircraft. You look at there was a '49 Cadillac inspired by the P-38. The twin tail fins.
Right.
At this point, I just love the F-14 Tomcat. And you can see Tomcat.
Cockpit's got that, yeah.
Well, the cockpit, but you see back there in the engine, that looks like the back end of the
aileron. What is it?
Well, where the engine nacelles come out of the fuselage. That was
Yep.
that was the inspiration.
So you're not, just Phil's point, you're not doing profiles, right? You're not doing side cutaways and stuff like that. You're saying evoke that feeling, and then sculptors are really putting those shapes and those intersections and the stuff like that.
Yeah, they're helping you. They turned my sketches into something far more than I expected.
Well, that's something I was.
That's where the magic is. That's why.
Are you working with them and kind of bouncing ideas back and forth?
We're bouncing ideas back and forth. And what if you? Oh yeah, I like that. Keep that. But can we move?
That's when it starts jiving.
It's a real. It's like musicians working together.
Well, even in the current day, and how technology's progressed and how much you can do, digitally with models and stuff. There's still the need for the physical thing in front of you to walk around. I mean, you can do all kinds. We were looking at renderings today. You can do all kinds of crazy light. You can do that, but you can't do this.
Right.
You can't stand at that back 3/4 and go like this and see that light change just that ever so. Or you can't get down, and gun sight it. You can't do those things without it physically in your face. You can get there and pretty close and sell the vision, but you can't yank that heart out, or pull on those emotions like you can with it physical there.
There's something about it. I mean, imagine your favorite actor. You see him on the screen, he or her, whether it's Clint Eastwood or who else would you think of? I didn't even take whoever you.
I'll take Clint Eastwood all day long. Absolutely. Then we'll go with that one.
Hedy Lamarr.
Yeah, Hedy Lamarr. Okay, from Heritage, she was unbelievable.
She was,
smart. She did a lot relative to
science and technology,
for
internet,
movie making.
cell technology.
Unbelievable. She was amazing. So at any rate, name your famous, your most admirable actors, and you see them on the screen or pictures of them. But if you were standing next to them, or you get a whole different impression. Same thing with any kind of designer cars. In today's world, fast forward to where we are now, 21st century, 2024. I can tell you right now, General Motors is adamant about retaining 3D properties. We have all the technology. We have, the virtual reality goggles or holograms, all that stuff, but there just isn't something. There's nothing that quite matches standing next to the real physical object. And we talked earlier about the importance of taking whatever you're doing, get it outside and look at it in a natural environment. And I always like to say the patio, we call it the patio, was a big outdoor viewing area that was secure. We still, GM just recently opened a brand new design center, and they not only retain, but Michael Simcoe, the VP now, said that they expanded upon it's even bigger. And I say that I maintain that is the single most important tool we have in this digital age with all the technology and talent we have to developing a new product. And as we talked about earlier, you can tell car or vehicles out there that maybe didn't do that so much. I mean, I had team members and management get after me for, why are you taking that car out so often? Why are you taking it out when it's like 25 degrees? You know, because it's just critical.
Right.
And you know, back to your original point, I just don't think, at least right now, there's a substitute for that physical model. And you know, companies have done it. They've done full digital cars and made production vehicles, and maybe they've been successful. I don't know, but some of the sculpture and some of the basic proportions are established by getting back and looking at it. Because I mean, I certainly can. I had the experience of, man, we should have spent more time with that out on the patio. You see it on the street after a number of years, you know? Yeah.
Well, it brings me, you just said that, you know, there's companies out there that have done full digital models and sometimes you can tell. My point, and I'm thinking through this, right, is that and
that's cool.
My counterpoint was going to be, well, there's some cars, it is good. There's some cars that probably don't need it for what that car is going to be. But
possibly,
you also, at the very beginning of this, you prefaced it with a designer should be able to design anything. So I'm thinking about, like, our go-to on this, I always talk about, this is the most generic car. If somebody just were to go and say, I want to buy a car, I don't really care what it is, it'd be a champagne Toyota Camry, right? That's just a car.
It's a mode of transportation.
It's just, I need to get from point A to point B. But at the same time, I know there was designers involved. But do they have to have a physical model? Like, but your point, like, they were passionate about designing it because a designer should be able to design anything. So I'm contradicting exactly what I was about to say. Of, like, you didn't need a clay model for a Camry. You don't need a clay model for a Camry today, because I just don't know if the buyer walks to the lot and is yanked on, like we back to the talk about, like, look at that. Look at how it flows. Look at how it does. But I know you're going to prove me wrong.
Well, I'm not. All I go by is my experiences.
I know.
And what I value and what I think really works in terms of design. But I'd venture to say they had to have taken that, even a Camry out, because a designer wants, even if it's a standard sedan or a basic vehicle, they want to do the best thing, best execution that they can do, and best artistic expression of that type of vehicle. And it's not only the form of it, but it's the stance, the character, the proportions are huge, trying to get that established outside, you know, those basic elements. And if you get it wrong, it just, you know, it other things that you do to it don't help, you know. It's bad because the bones are bad.
I think the patio for the Camry is a parking lot with lines, and they just kind of park it crooked over the lines.
But I see what, just because it's not stylized to the point that we would it would invoke emotion from us, that we would think it's sexy, doesn't mean it wasn't designed. Because to your point,
it's beautiful.
It could be put together and look like, you know, it came off of wish.com, right? And it doesn't look like a real car. So it could be really bad. So that does make a lot of sense. Just because when you say design, we look at the sexy, cool, sweeping, like, oh wow, a designer did that.
You get a different view on cars and what the passion and what it evokes.
At the same time, you could not design a Camry and just have a bunch of engineers engineer and build a car, and it would probably not. It'd sell really bad.
Well, but look at the Camry.
You could look like a Flintstones car.
How many years was it number one seller? Must be for a reason. And I would tell you, a lot of customers.
It wasn't for sexy. It wasn't because it was sexy.
However, and again, this is just my impression, is that customer would tell you that's a pretty car, that's a cute car. That's
somebody had to get that out of them. Somebody designed it to get that.
Well, it's actually it's tracked, and there'll be people who tell you, oh, I don't buy it for style. I don't buy it for the way it looks, and that may be true. But if you dug down deep, they would probably come out and say why they bought it, and then there'd be an aesthetic part of that rationale. And you look at a Camry, I mean, look at some of the surfaces in terms of how the highlights travel, how they converge, the proportional graphic relationships of the lamp, the DLO, you know, the side glass. All that is very well thought out. It just doesn't get, you know. I don't think it's thrown together in a vacuum. And I can only venture to say, because I've been to Suzuki Design, where they do motorcycles right next to cars back in the 90s when we did some Geo stuff. If you remember that.
The Sidekick and the Geo Tracker.
The Tracker, then they had a little coupe. That's actually the one that
Metro.
I was involved with. The Metro, the coupe. I think that, argue with me, but I think that's a cool little car. It had
man.
It had the biggest wheels for the time.
We can edit that out. It's not a problem.
You can for what it was.
But you tried to talk me into buying a Cobalt SS because I was so dead set on having that Camaro. And I remember you took me to one of your friend's house that his kid was my age and had a Cobalt SS, and you were like really trying to sell me on it so I wouldn't go down.
A Cobalt SS is far leaps and bounds different than a Geo Metro.
I mean, but
a Cobalt
still just
SS
like
was
a bunch of flat.
Yeah, but it had a dual overhead cam. It had a little hot motor.
All I can tell you is I put a lot of effort in that design, like we would do anything else.
Well,
Yeah.
here's perfect segue.
Yeah.
Talking about, and I don't mean to bring up what is possibly a sore subject. I hope it's not. You said a designer can design anything. Pontiac Aztec.
I was involved with that. That always comes up.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's become, honestly, it's a more of a cult following now, right?
He was overlanding before overlanding was a thing.
Yes.
It's a tent
Thanks
on
to
wheels.
Breaking Bad, I think, right?
Oh yes.
That's what started it. It's a cult car.
So
I was
how
involved with that. That was a ride.
what is the what's the mandate that you get? What's the hey, this is what we're looking to do? Like,
that came out when I ran the Advanced Studio in California. We did a concept called the Bear Claw, and it might be, I don't know.
Bear Claw sounds cooler than Aztec.
Well, in my mind, it was maybe at least first time we tried to do a crossover, at least in my mind. And so this was like 92 or something. 93. I don't know if that term had been used before. I don't think we used it, but I said, I mentioned the Riviera earlier. Bill Mitchell's mandate was, what would happen if you crossed a Ferrari and a Bentley? That was his design brief, from what I understand, from talking to my predecessors for Riviera. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it is cool.
Don't make it look like this. With just a couple of words that you can that are actionable, that you can create a vision in your mind.
You go from
what
there.
What would that look like? Isn't that cool?
It is.
So I said, what would
because those are two polar opposite from a design side.
Well, yeah, but think about that. I mean, yum. It's like a beautiful recipe. Honey and
the yin
whiskey.
and the yang. Yeah, you got. Yep.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's a recipe, right? So I said, what? I told my team, what would you get if you put a Z28 and an S10 in a blender? What would you get? So the Bear Claw was based on the S truck platform, four-wheel drive, big beefy tires, frame truck.
Yep.
And they came up with some concepts, and then I was transferred back. And I don't want to get in too deep because it was a swirling vortex,
really,
corporate wise and everything that surrounded the Aztec. But
I remember the early sketches looked very different than what actually went into production.
I don't care.
So we started on that, and without getting into too much detail, the decision was made at a high level to base the vehicle on the U platform, which was
Lumina.
Nope, the U van.
Oh,
remember the Dustbusters?
Yeah,
they called them the Dustbusters with the longs.
Yes,
which were pretty pretty wild for their time.
Yep.
It's like whoa, like Space Pod.
What was the old?
The best name. Yeah, the old is it Silhouette?
Yeah,
Silhouette.
Chevy had one. Oldsmobile had one.
Yeah.
Silhouette, I think. Called
Old Silhouette.
Had one.
Yeah.
They were always white with maroon interior. Every Silhouette you ever saw was white with maroon interior.
Oh,
dude, that Dustbuster name is perfect.
Yes.
Oh my God. Well, that's what we call it internally. There's all. I
don't wonder why.
we could spend an episode here on just nicknames and things and terminology within the industry. That's pretty cool, pretty colorful. But at any rate, so it went to that, and that was kind of changed the whole philosophy. So I can sit here and tell you it was a swirling, again, young, probably my first total production responsibility from design wise. It was just chaos.
There was that much interest in what this thing could be from the top that
Oh, yeah,
those many people
were
were
high. It was high visibility. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that designed by committee then versus?
There were a lot of
Designed
people
by
involved.
designer?
I'll tell you that.
There are a lot of people involved.
We're
going to move on to the next topic.
Yeah.
So brings it again. Good segue. So you talked about those designers that are colorful personalities and very forceful in trying to get their ideas away. They shoo the guy out of the secret studio. So when you're moving up, or even how did some of the chiefs deal with it when you were there? When you've got those forceful personalities that are very passionate about their design, right? They finally work through the sculptors to get their idea out and collaborative work. Now it's done. It can't get any better. It doesn't need anybody to touch it, mess with it, or whatever. Well, then obviously it goes through.
Then people start messing with it.
Then people start messing with it. Well, then, somebody's got to either come tell you, or you had to be the guy to tell your guys that this is how close we got. This is how much they've messed with it. This is what you've got to change or whatever. That's an interesting dynamic to deal with those creative personalities, those forceful personalities, and say, I know yours was better, right? But you understand we got to give a little. How does that work?
Are you talking about the whole enterprise?
Well, yeah,
production team, talking about the interaction or relationship not only within design, but you're talking about manufacturing, marketing.
I don't know how many times the design gets changed. So
it gets changed millions of times.
Well, there's a phase in the process where they have a design freeze where you're not supposed to touch it anymore.
Well, think about it. That's true. The automobile is so incredibly complex. So it kind of smiles when someone says, "Well, I'm gonna do an all new electric car. I'm gonna, a Tesla is to me is an amazing vehicle. You can argue about the quality and the design.
Oh, the fact that it exists is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think vision is usually singular. It's one person, but in order to implement that, it takes thousands of people to make a vehicle, bring it to reality. And so it's an amazing. I think it's the concept of doing a vehicle is bigger than one human brain can comprehend. It takes so many people. So we talk about teamwork and all that, and it's your design. Well, I will say, hey, I had a lot of help from my friends, and that's true throughout the course of my career because they're incredibly complex. And the more you get into them, you guys understand. You look at how the different components. Man, somebody spent hours on this,
right?
If not months or maybe even years. But at any rate, I think every program was different. Probably one of my favorites was the new Camaro, and that was right when that kicked off. I'm going to answer your question.
I'm following along. I'm intrigued.
So,
I love this.
So, and I remember the day when they announced they were going to cancel Camaro. And we were in a conference room, and Jerry Palmer was the team at the time. He was the chief at the time. He rolled that information out. He had he was in charge of not only Chevrolet 3 at the time, he was an executive director, so he was in charge of all Chevrolet and I think Pontiac. And every once a week we'd have this team meeting in a conference room. And he sat at the table, we're going to, we decided we're going to cancel Camaro. Sales were terrible, and it's kind of that the culture at that point had changed so much, moved away from it, and you could tell he was holding back the tears, because that meant Firebird's going to go away as well. And those cars were so passionate, had this incredible legacy of performance and beauty and impact on culture. Movies were made about those cars.
Right.
Aloha, Bobby and Rose, right? So, that's one of the many
instances
that they'll be forever etched in my brain to my dying day. Seeing that Corvette at third grade, seeing this iconic executive, tough executive,
be emotional.
He
what was that? 04?
I don't remember exactly.
2002 was the last year.
The last year was 2002.
Yeah, so that had to have been 2000, right around 2000 sometime. And then, fast forward to 2005, Ed Welburn came in after a trip over in Europe. I think he was in England and Germany. I think he was over at Opel. He came back and said, you know what? I think he said over there at a meeting over, he said, it's time to bring back the Camaro.
Is he, sidebar, is he as amazing as everybody says he was?
He is amazing.
Incredible.
I only hear nothing but the greatest praise.
I think Ed Welburn, again, I did not experience Bill Mitchell, but we see what he's done. When you think about it, Ed Welburn, that's a whole other subject for
absolutely.
But
he's as great as I've heard.
You might want to invite him, but
I'd love it.
He think about the vehicles that he did under his.
He had to work hard for what he got.
Well, he had to work hard
for those cars to come back.
Yes, he did. But it's he was involved with that, so he kicked that off. In my mind, he's the one that lit that spark again, that Camaro spark. And you can just imagine witnessing him coming into a meeting and saying that it's time to bring back the Camaro. Utter those words.
I bet that was
people.
Got to be chills.
Yeah.
I was just
hair standing up on the back of your
head. That's a good way for a morale booster right there.
So he started a project up and got engineering involved and upper management to support that small team to start developing what that might be package wise, look wise, and that was the era of Bob Lutz.
Okay.
Came on board, and at that time, the only front engine rear wheel drive platform we had was the Zeta platform out of Australia, down under.
The Holden,
right? Am I right?
Because in Australia, what we did was.
Yeah, no. And let me tell you, those folks down there, I'm not just saying this because Andrew's here. Andrew's awesome. I let him hang with my daughter. That's so awesome.
Yeah. He's a good-looking dude. Super nice.
He looks like a spy. He looks like
I know.
I think he should be the next 007.
007. I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got just a look, just a little bit in the eye where if you saw him in the movie at the beginning, you're like, he's probably going to double cross somebody at the end.
No. Maybe Spectre. He's going. I think he's the only guy that could stand up to Sean Connery. We can argue about who's the best James Bond. To me, Sean Connery.
Sean Connery is the best.
Craig.
See, that's the young generation.
Daniel Craig.
Oh, Sean.
Daniel Craig's good, but it's a different. Sean Connery is the only 007.
He's so.
I grew up
smooth,
watching with my dad,
classy.
and I just thought that was the coolest thing.
Oh, and he's the real deal.
Right.
There's a whole story about
at the end, I always got my eyes covered, and I always remember growing up. I'm like, I got to see what this is about, and then it's like nothing happens. Why? My eyes were covered for that.
During COVID, we watched
every
James Bond movie, starting from the very first to the very last, and we did it back to back, like night after night.
Yeah, but the old ones were the best.
But there were a couple in there that we had to like fast through. It was just like
they get a little goofy.
Yeah,
but the old ones were the.
I respect Sean Connery for the James Bond that he was. That was much more like fantasy driven and
style.
Agree on the style, but there's like a grit about.
He was born cool.
Daniel
He didn't
Craig
act cool. He was born cool.
Well.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about.
So Andrew,
let's continue. Anyways, he's the only that could, in my mind, could take that role on. Anyways,
it's 2 episodes in a row that you've been talked about, by the way. Yeah. Just so you know.
So,
and then you've got to come back on.
I just want to say,
you guys ever listen to Little Steven's Underground Garage?
No.
With Stevie Van Zant's channel on XM?
No.
Oh, it's all garage rock.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
That's what I grew up before I could drive.
The stems, Black Keys, all the cool stuff out of the mid '60s. Shadows of Night, all that stuff. We're deviating here, but he tells a story about Sean Connery in his early career. Yeah, he's a boxer. He was a boxer.
Right. I heard that.
So I don't know if they have that as something you can just pull up, but he tells an awesome story about him. You go, holy crap!
Elliot needs to find that, right? If Elliot's listening, he can find it and put it in there.
Because he would tell these stories about New York and Hollywood and culture. Find the one on James Bond. It's like, whoa, That is really cool.
I remember listening to
so
Little
cool.
Steven's Underground Garage when I wasn't cool in the winter because my only car was my Camaro SS 4th gen.
Great winter car.
And yeah,
Super winter
so
car.
mom and
Stuck
dad
on
drove me
flat
to
ground.
school in the winter, and when dad would drive me to school, we would always listen to Little Steven's Underground Garage.
It's coolest.
So back.
So yeah, can we help me?
So
start
I get.
Changing
Oh,
design.
I know what it was.
So what you're saying? Most of those designers that are on those projects, they kind of know the drill. They know it's going to be screwed with that much, and they just got to be happy that it got accepted at that point.
No, you try to maintain as much of the initial concept and the initial theme as possible. And there are we talked.
Oh, you're going to the 5th gen Camaro. Sorry.
I deviated with from just I can't overstate the complexity of a vehicle and how many people it takes to get involved with. And everybody has their view of the car. That's why that's why the model is so important, because the designers, most people cannot envision things in 3D. They can think of ideas or adding numbers up, quantifiably. And when they look at a sketch, a lot of times they don't see, it's like you've got like pencil or, it's 2D. They can't visualize that. At least that's been my experience. So what the model does, it embodies the entire enterprise of this product. So when designers are walking around and working on it, there's a picture in there of guys working on the Stingray model, which was a vision in the studio, mostly sculptors. Let's see. Hope we can get it too fast. And there's
Here, look at this.
Camaro.
You can drive.
Oh yeah, she's good at that. She's good at that. Find out where the sculptors are working on the Stingray in the studio. There's a picture of Jerry Palmer right there and John Cafaro. A couple of my heroes, design wise. This Jerry in the middle. I think he just retired, I think. But at any rate, and then John Cafaro on the right. He's an awesome designer. He was one of my mentors as well. But at any rate, if you can find that one where they're sculpting. But when engineering walks in, they see that model in a certain way, what's going on in the manufacturing. Marketing comes in, sees that model, but that is it. That's where we are. That's the design. However, whatever lens you want to look through that property, whether it's the gaps, the glass, the wheels, the lamps. Lamps are a huge thing. You can spend months on just a lamp. But anyway, that embodies everything. So that's another reason why models are so important. Seeing it on the screen only gets you so much.
You
don't sense the presence.
Bringing it back in. That's what we designed.
Yeah.
That's what we're building.
Well, that's what we're building. Well, no, but hey, let's talk about this. I don't like this. There's so many examples that I can share with you where we made major decisions on the clay model, whether it's a decision to go with that theme, one theme or the other, or down to a cut line, a gap. I can tell you we moved hardware underneath, negotiating with engineers to get certain shapes. One I remember is the C7, the hood, right up front. It's got one of those beautiful power bulbs in the middle, over the headlights, and it hinges forward.
Right.
So there's hinges in there. And I thought, man, that's too flat. I want that. I want more sculpture like the third generation, like the 68, 69. I want more of that beautiful sculpture. And I had to negotiate with Tad's Jector directly, just he and I, working around that area. What can we do? Below I really got to have it. And that's the other thing.
Get rid of the wipers. Bring that thing down.
That's just one example. But another name I like to throw out there is Tad's Jector. He was he just recently retired, the executive chief engineer for Corvette. I think there's only been 3 before him. But starting with Zora.
There's only 3. Including Zora?
Well, there's Zora, Dave McClellan, Dave Hill, and then I think Taj.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Am I missing someone?
I think that's everybody. Well,
Yeah,
now
it could
it's
Yeah.
Now it's
Tony Roma.
now it's Tony Roma.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the design VPs. There are these iconic individuals that are the pinnacle of the organization that are selected to run their Shining Star vehicle, their Halo vehicle. We're deviating so much.
No, that's the whole point of this.
You watched our episode.
There's so
finish a story.
When y'all get a project, like let's go back to the Gen 5 Camaro. So
all right.
How much?
Let's go back to that.
When you're working with engineers and you're working with the design team, y'all are working hand in hand. How you get bounding box kind of rough dimensions at the beginning to start designing around?
Yes.
All right. So like platform, you got platform stuff?
Everything's negotiable, and it's all question. I mean, you can question everything, and I think it depends on how much guts you have, how much confidence you have, how much vision you have. It determines how hard you push, and there is a balance. I would tell you what's worth fighting for, what's worth. Okay, that's not gonna affect. It's gonna be different, but I'm gonna change.
I want it lower. I want
bigger wheels. That was chuck lower. Yeah. And I kind of. Really bought into that philosophy, and that's a whole other story. But anyway, there's so many stories. Everything.
I love it.
Right. So let's go back to the original. How do you prevent your become from that cartoon where they take this beautiful dove and they pass it down the. You seen that cartoon?
Yes.
And they got pheasant feathers sticking out of it, and all stuff. It just
it's the design game of telephone.
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's done right in front of you, and it can be frustrating. But the key to that is creating a strong vision up front, and that's why concept cars are so important. So again, we did this. We did the Sting. We did the Corvette Indie. That was a strong concept, and I learned a lot by that experience. On every aspect, that kind of set the tone. I didn't realize what effect that was going to have in the design world, but it did have an effect, And again, I was this greenhorn they sent over to Italy. It was supposed to be done in England, and we got to Lotus, and they kind of went around, showed us everything. Well, where's the car? Well, it's in Italy. Oh, really? Why don't you tell us that right off the bat? So I hopped on. Jerry and I hopped on Lotus's company jet with Tony Rudd. You know who that is? He was like their legendary chief engineer, racing, all that. That's him right there. Went to Italy, and it was in one of the shop they used for concept cars. Lotus did, and that's how that was developed. So that came back to the Detroit Auto Show, and that kind of rocked the world. There's some pictures of that. We work on it, and we're working on it in the design dome. And again, all these things are going through my mind. Well, so I went over there as a greenhorn, not knowing I'm telling, a sculpting team or a fabrication team. I didn't know Italian. Saw cutting things out on my own because I felt it was right. We resorted to drawing cartoons on the fender of the car. Underneath that paint are all these cartoons and pictograms. Because that's how I need to cut a pair of scissors and cut out a shape here. So I draw a pair of scissors and a piece of paper. And Bruno, who was the chief of fabric, he'd go back and get some cardboard because we have to cut out some sheet metal and to fold it and bend it.
And they didn't really speak. They didn't speak very much English there.
When we went there to kick it off, they hired like a top-notch technical interpreter who got it all. But as soon as Jerry and the other executives left, they got the non-technical, inexpensive interpreter. It was a nightmare. So I said, you have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. I'm just going to draw cartoons on the car and talk to these guys.
Got the job done.
Well, it did. Yeah, they loaded me up with some wine at lunch and some grappa, and that was fun. Some of it I don't remember.
So my biggest takeaway, which is it shouldn't be eye-opening, but it really is eye-opening, is just like within any organization and what we do here and what any successful company should do, it's not. My mind kept always looking at this design thing where like the designer and the chief of design was the visionary that everybody had to get in line and follow. You're using the concept car to sell the entire company on the vision.
Absolutely.
And if everybody's bought into the vision, then the engineers want to work whatever it takes to get that vision done. This designer for the interior wants to do whatever it takes. At that point, then it is easier. Like, because you've sold the vision of the thing, just like we want to sell an idea here of to do it. It's not just a mandate. It's not just a blind, this is what I say, figure it out.
Well,
you got to buy in.
That might have happened sometime, at different instances. I'm sure it did. But I had the fortunate enough experience to where, like, let's go back to the 5th gen again. The opportunity for me to do that car was born out of the Stingray concept car, which was again done in Studio X. Started actually out in a remote building where we actually designed the C6. And after that program was over, I'm deviating a little bit. Sorry.
Deviate.
Because
I'm loving this.
There's
this
so
is going to be awesome.
Facets of this, and everything's connected. So we had the C16 together. It was called the Annex, Design Studio Annex North. And so C6 was probably the first Corvette that was done really. It was within the tech center, but it was done outside of design staff proper.
Really?
Yes. And it was done again to keep folks away. I mean,
it's a big thing. Generation change in the vet.
Yeah, but how could you not want to see what the next Corvette looks like? So it was hard to keep it low. So it was, the decision was made to put it up there. But so we did the C6 and had this team together. And over the course of being involved with Corvette, you go to these different events. Why don't you guys do the 63 split window again? That's the coolest Corvette ever. I agree. And my mind as a designer, I say, well, if you like the 63, just buy a 63.
Yeah. I see those comments online all the time.
Don't you?
GM should bring back the square
63,
body.
Yeah. Yeah. All those kinds of things. And, I understand that. Well, I get that. They're beautiful. They're passionate. People, why don't you do that?
Oh, because 50 years has gone by. That's why.
Well, that's right. And there are other things involved, right? So I had this in my mind. So I had this team. I said, what if we try that, because it's been bugging me. And I had a huge talented team. So in this building, they had a full-on auditorium, a theater, and they even had a projection booth. So I said, well, we'll meet at lunch. You guys sketch. We'll meet at lunch. I have the key. We'll go up there, go over to Wendy's or the sub shop, and we'll meet up there some pizza. No, that was way before Kebab House. And we'd meet up there, and we'd pin stuff. We'd be in this projection booth, and we would pin sketches on the walls, and have hamburgers or Wendy's and or Arby's, and we'd go through the sketches. This kind of looks like Camaro. Let's put these over here. That looks pretty good. Let's put this over here. And we picked a few to do scale models, and out of that came one of the Stingray concept, which was, long story short, was shut down for a while. That's another story. You have these moments in time where you think you're going to get fired. That was one of them. So then
because of that project?
Oh yeah, that's another story.
You don't want to talk about that story?
Well, all I'll say is I didn't ask for permission.
Did you ask for forgiveness?
Well, no.
Well, you got to ask for one or the other.
Yeah.
I've learned that it's generally one or the other. You got
for permission.
All right.
But anyway, so that was tucked away. So Ed Welburn comes on board.
You've been reading those Bill Mitchell stories. You said, "Screw this, I'm going to do it."
Well, you're driven by that, and again, as a manager, I came to realize that you are not, especially at a high level leadership, that drives millions, if not billions of dollars worth of revenue and affects thousands, if not millions, of lives, whether it's internally or customer wise or whatever. You're making big decisions. You aren't earning your money if you aren't on the ragged edge of that. You are not earning your money. You got to push that. And believe me, I've been there probably more times than I like. And sometimes I didn't realize
That's some damn good advice.
Well,
I was just about to say no.
I love that advice.
You have a vision. But
finally, I'm validated.
Along with that, just so management don't keep what you're doing visible to the people who are who you report to, and who are responsible ultimately. Because it's the design leadership and the corporate leadership ultimately stands in front of that vehicle. Mark Royce stands in front of that new ZR1. He's the one that introduces that to the world. So he's got to know about that. I can tell you a story about 65 Impala. It's pretty funny about not telling management what you're doing before you expose it. That's a great story. Anyway, so let's.
There's all these great stories that we don't get to hear.
And this is what we're told. Well, we'll come around. So
I'll remind you.
So Ed Wilbur came on board, and somehow I forget how the discussion came. He said, "I really love this model. I'd love to do this as a Corvette concept." Ed Wilbur said, "Okay, why don't we? Let's explore that. In fact, why don't you go down to Studio X, open that back up, and let's do a full size of that clay." So we got on there. Long story short, build that clay quickly from one of Lee's sketches. He was an awesome designer, ultimately involved with Corvette and Camaro.
How many guys are on that clay model?
The little one or the Studio X one?
Studio X one.
Probably 4 or 5. And we did electronic milling and we did hand modeling. Men and women that were just, again, super talented that came from the Corvette team down. We put it down there. So we whipped that up. We brought it in the design dome, had it up on the stage, and then there were they'll have these product reviews, and they had a Camaro down there that Bob Boniface and his team were working on in Design North. And so this is up on stage, and people are looking at this Stingray model up on stage. You want to pull up a picture of the Stingray?
Yeah.
All right. So after that show happened, I get this call from Ed Wilburn's office. Say, we're going to do a hard model of that clay model, that Stingray. And by the way, why don't you come up with some alternatives for Camaro, the design? So that model that I almost got fired for, the design thing, at least in my mind, I thought I was going to get fired, or I got in trouble for, came around, and we're going to do a full-size model. Oh, by the way, then Ed asked me, he goes, we had a card model, and they call them static models. They're standalone. They don't have an engine in them, no interior. He said, how do you think it turned out? I said, pretty good. He said, well, what's wrong? Why you don't like it? I said, oh yeah, I like it, but if I had to do it over again, I'd make it a little smaller because I based the proportion around 23s and 22s. I said, if I had to do it again, I'd do 22s and 21s to scale her down. Ed goes, and I'm paraphrasing because that seems like a long time ago now. Okay, well, why don't you remodel it in those proportions? And oh, by the way, why don't you make it a full running concept? Interior, exterior, full running gear, all that. Oh. So that was kind of cool. A neat road from getting in trouble to this. So people don't know this. That car, those models became incredibly profound in terms of its effect on Chevrolet. So we built that prototype along with, we're given the assignment to do, and this is right before General Motors you're off for 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of July. For
some
changeover.
Of us.
Yeah, well, some of us, yeah. Well, for changeover factories, start with that. Now, some union negotiation. But about a week before that, Ed called myself up to his office and said, we want you to do some alternatives for Camaro. And so I went and got my small team together and said, start sketching. So they came back from the break with sketches. They sketched all through their break. I mean, to your point about inspiration, and you just
once the fire's lit,
fire was lit, baby.
It don't matter. Nothing else matters.
Going to Florida or whatever.
Yeah.
If they were on the beach, they were sketching on the napkins and stuff. So we came back, put all that up.
Are you doing this run and drive and prototype? Is that all done at GM, or are you outsourcing that with special projects? All internal.
All in our shops, which are amazing. Again, I can't overemphasize the talent, sculpting. They did everything but a foundry. They could do everything but foundry work in there. Unbelievable.
When's the decision made to take it to metal crafters or special projects or something like that? Is that not done that much anymore?
I think it is. We had different instances of that based on capacity of our own shops.
Okay.
Or certain expertise or technologies. We would elect to do them somewhere else. And again, huge talent in that town.
We tried to build as many of our SEMA vehicles as we could in the design shops because the talent there was so extraordinary.
And security.
As well. But then there were...
They have secure places too.
Yeah, and there were some cases where if it was the security risk was lower.
That right there I'm going to put that as a backdrop. That's sexy. Damn, that's good looking.
So I think, again, the team did, to your point, thank you for saying that.
I'm serious.
I mean, you can see the two, but you can see the difference in how modern it looks. That thing rocked the world, and at least internally.
Wow.
And so we did that car. At the same time, I got the assignment to do a version of the Camaro, which ultimately went forward to becoming the theme decision. And to get back to your point, how do you keep the design from changing? Again, you have leadership vision that kind of downfield blocks for you. In case of the Camaro, I'm going way back to answer your initial question. I'm trying not to forget what you're saying.
Not a big deal. This is amazing.
Okay.
Forget the question. All this is better.
So imagine that Camaro coming out on stage for the first time. And again, we went from sketch to running vehicle, and a lot of that was due in part to the entire team that was working on Camaro. Bob Boniface's team. We had Oppenheiser, who became the chief engineer for that. Their teams, engineering team, Bob's team, our design team as well, to culminate in that visionary model. So 6 months of that thing were. I think it was Bob Lutz that drove that from behind the curtain out on a turntable, spun it around, and on its own power went down. I call it the gauntlet, down into this other turntable in the middle of the auto show. Talk about gutsy. I mean, that they were wrenching and tuning things and software behind that curtain.
Wait, y'all aren't down the wire like we are at SEMA, are you?
Oh,
I thought you had that thing ready done.
Well, there's also
how many coolant puddles are in front of them?
Well, there's also a few pictures of the Cadillac 16, which I was responsible for.
I was going to ask you about that one.
It was wet when we pushed that out. That's a whole nother story.
That was done at Special Projects, right?
Ooh, yes. Kenny Ennis, another amazing.
That thing was
amazing guy.
That was another Kenny? One.
Oh,
no, I don't
God.
know that.
Yeah.
But that was a concept car that came out that I remember seeing the first one.
And that was another.
And it was a yanking. Well, that's why I bring out it yanks because it does. It pulls on where you're like, oh shit. I know that won't ever get built, or like we see it.
We tried.
But
we tried, yeah.
Fuck, that would have been amazing. But it doesn't matter. What those things, you're like, I see what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And that, from a consumer, from an enthusiast or something like that, when you see the thing that will never get built, and then the thing that you're like,
trickle down.
The one that they're going to build is going to be real close to that. Or on the Cadillac side of things, you're like, all right, now I see the new face of Cadillac.
Yep.
Now I see the chiseled edged line, and now I know I know what's coming for all the product line.
Yep.
But we
are. But we'll come back around.
Yeah, we're coming back around.
That and the Evoque concept car. Kip Plasenko's Evoque. That set the tone for art and science. Those two cars for Cadillac, and then the romance of it. And again, Bob Lutz was involved in that car as well.
That was modern day Great Gatsby.
It was. And by the way, that's another project I thought I was going to get fired.
Really?
Oh yeah.
On the fifth,
I think you're missing the mark on the ones you're going to get fired versus promoted.
Yeah. Ragged Edge. See?
It's not like I'm looking to
still no.
But so let's go back to the Camaro real fast. So.
At that point, you've rung the bell. When that thing comes out, it's essentially rung the bell.
Well, imagine they invited me to have they had all generations of Camaro. They selected mine to drive up there, and it was like running a gauntlet. It's like this. It was palpable. You could feel the people. This is a machine. And people. I couldn't drive, but I could ride in my own car in this parade that led out before they pulled the concept out. And so mine was the first gen. I mean, there were stanchions and ropes, and I swear to God, there were grown men crying. I mean, weeping.
Because it's back.
When this car's come back in anticipation for what was about to happen. I mean, this is a machine doing that to people, grown people. So it goes out there, and it's introduced. Bob drives up on this the permanent display turntable, and it's called the Scrum, where all the media and whoever are allowed to come up on stage and view it. Well, I remember Rick Wagner's up there, Bob, Ed, I can't remember, I think Mark Royce and some of the top guys, top management was up there. I think they were taken back by the people that just welled in on this car. I'm standing back there watching this. They were like, it's like a mob scene, it was that you could see it in their eyes. It was like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Right.
They were just inundated, So at any rate, that all came about pretty quickly. So then that was when the decision was made. Okay, we're going to take this, turn it into a production car. We're gonna make it a full blown program after that experience, that episode, right? Because before it was just a concept. And I will tell you, there were people in the corporation that did not understand why we were doing that as it was rolling off the assembly line. But to your point about people wanting to change it or going other ways, or why are we doing that? Why would you do a car?
Can't change it now.
You can't sit in the back seat. Why a car that doesn't need that big engine or wheels that big? There are people that just cannot comprehend that. They're so logical. And what drove that was Bob Lutz saying, in effect, your direction is to keep as close to that concept car as possible.
Yep.
That's all it took. The other quote that I remember Bob saying, which was clarified so much when he came on board in terms of that whole corporation, Bill gotta have products. That's it. That phrase is actionable.
Right yeah.
You didn't have to have all the mumbo jumbo or a corporate speak or any of that.
Toyota didn't say that about the
Bill
Camry.
Gotta have
just
products. That was just amazingly profound and powerful and simple and actionable. And so that was the mantra that drove the interpretation of that concept car into production, which the team did a wonderful job engineering, led by Al Alpenheiser and his incredible team, design, of course. And the car spoke for itself. It embodied the Camaro spirit, and it was clearly understood. I hope I answered your question.
100%.
So that kind of clears the way, gets everybody lined up, because I said all these thousands of people involved in creating a product. That doesn't happen every time.
Right.
That was a rare instance. I think it was driven by passion. You just couldn't deny it.
I feel like looking at a lot of your concepts too, they're almost more production based. Do you take a lot of that into account, that it could be a production car? Some of the stuff is so outlandish. You're like, that's never gonna. It's an awesome shape, but it's never gonna be a car.
You say that now, but we're looking back at it because how many production cars have been inspired by that? If we'd have seen that in the damn thing, you'd be like, "There's no fucking way they're going to build anything even close to that."
I was considered the engineer's worst nightmare. I had no respect for budgets or
figure out where to put the shock tower. It's not my fault.
I think what helped me in that regard was experience as a kid drawing Ed Big Daddy Roth stuff. Because you look at Ed Big Daddy Roth art or Harry Bradley, as I mentioned, it's exaggerated, but it's correct.
Right.
You look at the headers, the suspension, it's all there, because he had automotive designers and artists working on those. I'd go back to one of the Ed Big Daddy when I was a kid, like some of his stuff.
Yeah.
Because I have that one plate that's got some of his stuff in it. Because you guys remember you guys are probably too young. The Hot Rod magazine opened up 2-page spread of T-shirts.
Yep.
Are you old enough to remember that?
I get a lot of old magazines.
Okay, all right. So they had these.
I've even got the small ones.
2-page spread. And, I'm, like 14 or 15, 1967, 68, they had the gassers and what were the outlaws called? The
Street Freaks.
Yeah. Well, no, it was before Street Freaks.
Okay.
Altereds.
Remember
Altereds?
Yeah, I was never an Altered fan.
So, but I know, because I always know, but take, how short can you make the wheelbase?
Yeah, I know.
And let's just sit you up.
Goofy.
Bucket tees, you don't sit in them, you sit on them, right?
Yeah.
And let's put a blown Hemi on it. And we don't need brakes in the front, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Put a massive wing on the roof, though.
Yeah, that'll help you. So stuff like that, and then the funny cars, all the the FX cars transitioning into funny cars. As a kid, these are like the superheroes.
That anatomy of a funny car drawing is amazing.
But go back to the Ed Big Daddy Roth cars first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Now you became our Jamie.
This one?
You became our Jamie.
No, the one with Ed Big Daddy Roth. There's a picture of it in there. I put it in there up front. It's up on top. Up. I think it's up there. Early pictures of me when I was a kid. With the inspiration, I don't know how these things sequence out.
Not this one.
No, Mom knows. No, not my artwork. I want Ed's up. So, anyways, that inspired me to understand maybe kind of the mechanic, and then building model cars. I still tell kids today, even in all electronic stuff, not that one.
But you've built a model of that.
Yeah, I know, but go try and find Ed, please.
I can't find it.
It's a kind of a collage.
Oh, what'd you do?
Uh-oh.
I'll have to find it.
She'll find it. At any rate, so I think
I learned more about cars from doing models than I did anything else.
Yeah, so I still tell them at design schools or whatever, build a model, because there's so much you can learn and have fun doing it too. You understand packaging, graphics, materials, how things go together, how things are made. You don't even realize you're just having fun building a model, right?
We talked about on her podcast, I bought the Banshee model.
No.
A bunch of them because I stole the wheels off of them and put them on other cars.
Yeah, I heard that, yeah. Funny.
Because it was a big wheel for a model car.
That was fun sculpting that one. But at any rate, so I think whether deliberately or subconsciously, I kind of knew how things went together and kind of had a feel for it. But initial stages, I tried to just do something that was a beautiful sculpture, and then from there we'll work that out. Because if you are fortunate enough, and I was blessed enough to work with team members, engineering and marketing and manufacturing, and all you got to do is spend time with them, talk with them, tell them, somehow describe your vision. You get them in passion too about that.
I remember you telling stories about Dave Leone and you in the wind tunnel, like laying under, like you take as much, you make as much effort to meet them where they are as you want them to meet you where you are.
That's right. You just try to look through the other person's eyes, whether it's marketing, engineering. Then you can talk with them. Dave Leone is chief engineer, executive engineer for the XLR, which was inspired by the Evoque concept car. That's another one I almost got. Why pick up stuff that I thought I was going to get fired?
That was
I was going to get fired for that one too.
Badass car. Well, I mean, good. It was the whole thing was, it was like, so you tell me I can get like a luxury vet? It was a Corvette with a Cadillac badge, and it was awesome.
I think it still looks good today.
It's
clean and simple. And
at that point in time, I was working for a land development company, and the three partners, right, had all made same amount of money around the same amount of time, right? And they were S-Class guys, right? They had all bought the same SL Mercedes, right? And that's the same thing. And I remember, like, when that XLR came out, I was like, man, that thing's way cooler. And it was significantly out of my reach. But at that point, I thought it was just a little out of my reach. And it was like trying to figure out a way how I could pull up to the office in the XLR. I thought it was so badass. I still do to this day.
Badass cars.
It's just like, yeah. We should do a resto mod one.
It's an option.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's no Ford Probe.
So Ford Probe.
You guys are inspired.
No Geo Metro.
So again, that was another one they tried to keep as close as they could to the concept car.
Yes.
The interior changed dramatically. That's when I think I got sideways, because I tried to keep as close as I could to the concept car, and somehow upper management.
Cadillac's exterior design there for a while definitely outpaced its interior design for quite some time. And then it started catching up. But
interiors, that became a focus again when Bob came on board. Hey, you got to spend as much time, and some of that is resources and money to put into the interior is a concerted effort to do that. And GM came around and did that. There was it was a culture shift, at least from my perspective. That's what I perceived and experienced.
I got you.
So, so those concepts are so important to establish that vision that everybody can understand. And there are certain reasons why you deviate, whether it's physics or whatever, manufacturability could be any number of things.
Right.
It could be safety.
How about it's a V16 and it's got a 175-inch wheelbase? That's probably another thing that would probably keep it from hitting the road.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's a whole other great experience. There's not too many things cooler than a hot rod Cadillac. And that's what that was.
Where's that at now, that car?
I think it's in the GM Heritage Center.
Is it?
Yeah.
It goes. They send them out to different shows on occasion, but you look at it. It was they got in partnership with Alcoa, and you can pull up that one picture of the motor and all that. Everything was Alcoa billet. The firewall was solid chunk of billet.
Really?
Oh yeah, machined. You guys appreciate that, you know. That the fire was so crooked there, but that it's all a cold billet, and the body was aluminum.
It was billet so they could mirror polish it and just put a regular LS in it, and make it look like a 16.
Yeah,
That's a good trick.
Yeah, but I mean the body was all aluminum, and say, ooh, it's a all metal body. Well, you know what? My experience, all metal body means it's just a carrier for Bondo.
Yeah. If you want to make it look slick, you're going to have a little filler on
Well,
it.
the hood on that is probably about that much Bondo on it. Yeah.
It needed the V16.
I remember we were in there, and this was a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week project.
You were in there on
special
Christmas.
Project, all Christmas.
I remember.
Yeah, I got called out for not being in there on Christmas. But anyway, I remember being there days. I remember there's so many visions I have, but there was one day in there. There was one of the guys. He was a body work guy, and there was so much Bondo on this. I think it was a door. Yeah, it was door. He had it on a sawhorse, and he's grinding it. And I remember he had a cigarette, and the way the light was shining from overhead, it was like he's down there, and you could see the glow of the cigarette, and he's like, and there was this. The shops are different, than the corporate environment.
Yeah, they're real different.
The dust and the chunks were like V-ing off his head. He's just down there with the cigarette glow and just this V with the light shading on it, and he's just getting after it, man.
Well, he had a cigarette in, so he was safe.
He did, yeah. It was safe. And
that's better than any N95 mask you could buy, and I've got facts to back it up.
Area was working on,
Yeah.
But these are amazingly talented people. Again, too, I was fortunate to work with.
Through all this stuff, all the unveils, right, and all the black tie affairs, and all of the designs, and all of the meetings with the high corporate ups, and seeing sales numbers, and seeing man, I did. At what point in your career, just meeting you in this brief last few hours, whatever, you're a very humble guy. You give a lot of credit to a lot of people. You had a vision from a very young age of knowing exactly what you were going to do. At what point in time was there the take a deep breath, step back outside of yourself and look around and be like, holy shit, I'm doing it. There has to, everybody's got that time. And it's not being braggadocious. It's not being anything like that. But there's always that time. Everybody's got it. Now, sometimes people don't want to admit it, but everybody's got that time where they step outside of themselves. They look down and like, I'm doing it.
I had several of those. Probably the first one was when I told you about the catalog, just selling all my stuff, all my tools, everything, and going out to California. My car blowing up in Lubbock, Texas, middle of the night. Had a Steven Spielberg Starry Sky, black. So
it blew up in Lubbock, the same place you ended up going to work.
Oh yeah, isn't that crazy how life works?
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. And then my cousin David Van Kirk
should have just left it there. You'd have picked it up in a few years.
Who was one of my idols. Because when I was a kid, he was a Top Gun pilot.
A little closer.
He went to Miramar and all that stuff. He flew Phantoms, but I remember in 1969 he bought a 428 Corvette Mustang, and his father, my uncle, who was also a Marine, would drive. I think it's Nolan Avenue in Independence, Missouri, was their Woodward.
Okay.
Hundreds of cars. They take me out there cruising on that. And you remember things like that. You remember that shaker scoop. You remember all those things. Those are those things you remember. But he just got out of the Marine Air Corps. Those the guys are badass, So, just ask Bob Lutz. So he said he didn't want to, I'll put it this way. He didn't want to fly commercial as a commercial pilot. So he's a crop duster there.
Okay.
Yeah. So he helped me fix up the car, and I continued on my way. That's a whole nother story.
Wow.
He did show me, don't tell mom and dad, my aunt and uncle. He pulled back a tarp, and here's this balled up plane there. So he goes California and hanging with his buddies and outside Miramar, and so I went to their condo. That's another story. Anyways, there's a 59 Cadillac.
It was a different time. It was a different time.
All right, so being in the class at Art Center first time before I met Carol, and have Harry Bradley as a teacher.
Which who you saw in the flyer?
I was crying, yeah, because he's a guy. I had a folder of all his artwork.
Yeah,
he was a god, just and I didn't really understand design at the time. So then the next one was walking in General Motors as an intern because I was selected out of a group from school to be an intern and to be at the tech center, walk around there and be in design. And then many others. The other one was walking in Chevy 3 studio, the Corvette studio. No fooling. You're one of the designers in this room now. Chevy 3. I have the old piece of tile in my studio at home says 3 on it, and there's all these cut marks and scars. Think about that. The '63 Stingray was designed in that room.
Did his mom give you a pass after that?
Oh, well, yeah. She came around. Well, because I went back. So being in that room with these legendary people, Randy Watteens at, L88 Corvettes, and they worked on all those, that I could be in that. They gave me the code to go in that room and sketch on cars. Oh, by the way, do Corvette Indies and beyond, And so those are probably some of the biggest moments. And another one I will tell you that I remember being in my own studio working on the C7 at the time. And we talked about sculptors and clay models, the value of that. I remember I would go in there every morning about 6:30. I'd go down to the shops, get a shop cup. They mix resin in. They're little cups. I loved them. And I'd get some coffee out of the paint shop or the wood shop, and I'd go over to a little garage. I don't think I have a picture of it. They're called Mechanical Assembly, and that's where design would maintain all their concept cars, like the Y Job.
Okay.
The Cadillac Le Mans, the 59 Silver Stingray. All those cars were down there, and I'd shoot the shit with those guys.
Wow.
There's so many side stories. Can I tell you one more?
Yeah. That's the whole point of this.
So I'm down there one morning, and they have a Monza Spider. You remember that concept car? It's got the exhaust coming out the back, real snarky. It's got the Spider logos on it.
Almost like a Hot Wheels car.
That every time I'd go in there, they had that up on the hoist for about 2 months. 2 months. I said, well, why is that still doing that? Because they would fix them up. Those are all the cars that design was responsible for. Well, we need a timing light. And so we're going to go out and get a time light one day. We need to do some work with that. I go, I'll see you guys in the morning. So I went back home that night, and I pulled out. I mentioned my uncle, my cousin David, my uncle Donnie, who when he got out of the Marines, he went to work for Sears. So in his garage, he had all the tools. So when I was there 14 or 15, he taught us how to change spark plugs and all that. So he gave me a new in the box Sears Chrome.
I was going to say it's chrome.
Made in America.
I know the
light.
You know the light. Was it still in the box? Cardboard box?
Still in the box. So I brought that into mechanical assembly. The
had a dial on the back, right?
I don't remember it having a dial.
I don't
think it had.
Was it just buttons?
It was just a trigger.
Yeah,
all I know,
I think
it said the trigger and the clip on.
Okay.
So I brought that into this hallowed space where they maintain all these concept cars. Think about that. That's another epiphany where how many people get to do this? I could walk down there, swipe or code in, go in there and drink coffee with these guys around these cars. So I see her use this timing light, like a timing light. And by the way, when I retired, I said, you guys keep this here. And I just thought of my Uncle Donnie, who loved cars, and my cousin Dave, who one of my mentors. I got the tool that he gave me. Now it's in this hallowed space.
Yep. That's cool.
Working on these iconic cars. How cool is that? I just love that. So anyways.
What's worse is that General Motors didn't have a fucking timing light. But
I'll tell you what, they have everything else. I think the one they had broke.
I got you. I'm just giving you shit.
We timed the Monty with that timing light.
We did.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, very cool. So that has legacy, and he's up there looking down on that saying,
that's awesome.
That's pretty cool. So that, and then let's go back. So probably the last area where I thought, man, this is really something is when I went down, got my coffee, talked to those guys, went back to the studios. I walk in, and the sculptors usually get in early, and we were going to have a show that day out in the patio with Ed. So we're hustling in the studio. I don't know if you've ever been in a design studio, but we're working on the
unfortunately haven't.
We got a mill going, it's cutting the back, and some of the guys are the men and women sculptors are sculpting different corners and all that. They're bringing in Dynoc, which is like going back to model cars, like a big giant. You wet it's like a big decal. Mm-hmm. That's starting to come in there, and so it's this choreography of people, guys coming in taking measurements. Designers doing mock-ups on it, doing wheel mock-ups, taping on it, knife cut lines, and it's just someone would step away, someone would step in, and I'm standing there with my cup of coffee. I'm looking at this. It's like this orchestra playing these beautiful symphony, putting this symphony together, preparing it, and I'm standing here watching this amazing,
right,
the best talent in the whole universe on this model, working this to some music I've put on the stereo, and I said, man, this is unbelievable in all the world. Like I wouldn't be anywhere else.
That's
to witness that talent in full on focused creative mode. I mean, I felt blessed. I never took 1 minute for granted.
That's good.
In 40 years.
Most people.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100% it makes sense, and I'm happy that you have those moments, because half the people won't be honest about the moments, and then the other half of people don't take time to remember the moments, right? And that's the thing. We talk about this all the time with different shops and with the different other people in business and stuff, and that's. Everybody's got we go through the progression in a podcast, and the vision at a young age, or the thing, or the changes along the line of I thought I was going to do this, but it turns out I'm really good at this. And you go through all the stuff, and you go through the trials and tribulations and the struggles and stuff. You get all the way to this now I'm doing what I'm doing, and then you ask back about well, at what point do you realize, or you take the step back and you're like, oh no, it's just one foot in front of the other, and you've spent your whole entire life. I know that we talk about it. You are so busy of trying to be successful, and you're trying to make things happen. But you've got to, there's those times when you're the hard work's paying off. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what I thought it was going to be, or it's way different than I thought it was going to be, but I'm happy doing what I'm doing. It
was way different than I initially thought it was going to be.
Right.
That's where the word passion comes in, because passion helps you to create and celebrate the good times. The passion also helps you get through the really bad, tough times. And let me tell you, creating these vehicles, design specifically, all the other disciplines as well, is not easy. I
think the biggest part of it, we talk about it here, and we've talked about it internally off the air. The striving and the drive, that passion that you're talking about, is always trying to be better and trying to do the next thing, right? Well, by nature, that makes you not pay attention to the thing that you've just done or just finished, because you're looking ahead to do the next thing. And that's what. But it's a byproduct. Yeah, it's a byproduct. Or that's the bad part of being that way. And it's what makes you successful, but it's also makes it to where you never enjoy the journey, right? Or the thing, or the small little successes, right? Because you're always well, that might have been a success to everybody else, but I've got to be better the next time, or this one's going to be better. I'm already thinking about 4 steps ahead, and that's unfortunate.
It feels like you stopped when you literally stop and appreciate where you're at. Then you're not
30 seconds to smell the roses is not going backwards. It just more people need to smell the roses.
You have to make an effort to do that, and we did as much as we could. And there was always time for that, whether it's just getting together or going out for pizza or bringing pizza in or whatever, or.
Lots of food in the design studio.
Oh my God!
There's throughout all of GM, but it is. I think especially difficult when you're working for an OE, because we're constantly having to think 5, 7, 10 years in the future, and you really do have to make an active effort, no matter what part of the business that you're working in, to take time and appreciate the teamwork that you've been part of, and the movements that you've made and the effect on the whole industry.
But that's even crazier to think about, is because those are team successes, knowing that you did a great job, but your measure, as far as that car selling or that, breaking records, doesn't happen for another 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And now you're like,
You're onto
oh
something
shit, I
else.
remember doing that. Like I've forgotten all about that thing. I think selling good, everybody likes it, but you're onto something so far. That's tough.
True.
I always asked, like, 'cause I always asked my dad, like, just growing up, especially. I mean, now I have a much stronger sense of what that means, having worked for GM as long as I did. But I always asked him, like, why don't you own one of the cars that you designed? He's like, well, I'm always on to the next one, so it just sort of feels.
Well, here I am. I'm thinking about the C8. I'm trying to locate a specific C8, and I'm sitting here thinking about, oh, that's so awesome. But to you, it's like it's old news. Like I saw that 10 years ago. What's a big deal?
Well, yeah. I mean, you appreciate it. You understand it because what each one of these cars represent is an experience with people. And again, people, and that's so important. That's what you try to hold on to. The vehicle speaks for itself. And again, I feel blessed and fortunate to have been trusted with being involved with these. I can't tell you, just every day. Yeah, to Adrienne's point, I always had company cars, Corvettes and stuff, and those were cool, and trucks because I was responsible for a truck too. But I try to explain it because I try to understand that because I would always see some of the executives, they would drive company cars, but they never, a lot of them didn't really buy them because you're on to the next way and think mentally. Plus, I think also to the old stuff, like I said, I mentioned that I had we have a 65 Impala and a Corvette and the Camaro. There's something about, like, maybe it's wine or whiskey. If it ages, it develops like this richness or soul that there's just something that the new cars don't have. I don't care what it is. Ferrari, Corvette, whatever. I can't explain. They're beautiful cars and they're wonderful. They perform like crazy. But there's just something about these. There's a personality or a character. Plus these, I think
it's the interior smell.
I was just gonna say it's like the glue or the foam that they use.
You talking about
GM just needs to make GM needs to make that. Just put a little.
Yeah.
Not from my view. I'm looking at, and I think I have a different perspective too. As a designer, I always try to envision what was going on when they were doing what I was doing with the modern cars on that car. What was the sculptor thinking? What were the designers? Who sketched this? What are they having to deal with? Engineering or problem-wise, aerodynamics or packaging or whatever, So I mentioned I have some pretty cool a couple stories on that 65 Impala. I mean, you guys think it's just a dad car and this old car, but you don't understand why I drive. But
there's a lot of shapes to it.
I don't know why I drive that. I can't explain it. I think I might understand it more.
It's
than
always
all my
the
other
car
cars.
you'll pick to drive.
Yeah, because you know why? Because I think because it's social and it embodies not only memories, but there's design. I mean, that car is revolutionary and significant. And look at the quarter panels; those were inspired by the '63 Stingray.
Yes, it's got vet hips. It's got vet hips.
So
yeah.
you want to hear a little story about that one? And this is secondhand. These are some of the guys that lived it that told me. So they're in there. I mentioned Irv Rabicki, right? He was the chief of the Chevy studio. So they were doing the 65, and this is a paraphrase, right? Of course, they were doing this is the story interpreted. Work on the 65. And the way it was described to me was kind of a modified 64. It wasn't that big of a step change difference.
Okay.
And so they had a big corporate management review in the studio, and I guess they were underwhelmed. It was a little kind of low-key. And Bill Mitchell's in there too, right? So I don't know how it came about exactly, but usually even in the production studios, sometimes if they have a few extra sculptors or designers or extra time, the studios are big enough, we call them 20-foot boards. There are big 20-foot boards that you could do tape drawings or engineering drawings or these big illustrations with airbrushes. And they had wheels on them so they could roll them around. And sometimes when you have a review, they'd hide all the crap, all the junk behind it, furniture, rolls of tape, armatures, old car models, and then block it off. So when you have a presentation, the studio is very clean.
We do the same thing with welding screens.
Yes.
Well, you hide crap.
Yeah.
Hide junk, hide the garbage,
around,
Or I don't know if you guys have meteors or people in here or whatever, you kind of push them and you cover it up, right?
I did the same shit when I cleaned. My mom told me to clean my room.
Under the bed. Or
there's always places to put it.
It's exactly the same thing, right? You'll clean it up later because you're hustling getting the model together, right?
Yep.
So I don't know how it was introduced, but I think it was probably Earl says, well, we do have something we could show you, because the meeting was not going good. So they rolled back these 20-foot boards, and here's the model of the 65 Impala. Everybody went, whoa, do that. So it was like, yeah, great, awesome. So they're all walking out, probably 30, 40 people in there, right? All top management downtown, 14th floor. Good job, get out there, yeah, we really did it, we're going to do it all happy. So at that time, the studios, that's what they had when I initially got there, studio receptionist, studio clerk, ring, 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 because they had one phone. It was before before phones, obviously. Ring, 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 yeah. This is Bill Mitchell's office. Mr. Mitchell would like to see Mr. Rubicki in his office immediately.
That's not the phone call you want to hear.
So you went up there.
If it's, hey, meet me tonight, we're going for drinks, that's the one you want to hear. But then
this is probably third hand, but from the way it was told to me was that Bill Mitchell said, don't you ever show something that I haven't seen to management without me knowing it. But good job!
Yep.
On that car. So things like that. That goes back to some of the other things we were talking about, but about not keeping things visible. But just another example of where there's a creative passion and inspiration to do something that isn't necessarily the process.
Right.
And that's for the vision. That's why I think that's a good example of, you got to be on the edge, got to push it,
Well, the only reason Bill wanted to know because he wanted to take credit for it at the beginning.
Well, he's going to get credit regardless, but he didn't want to be surprised because it could have gone the other way.
Right.
And
it would have been on him.
Why'd you spend resources on doing that? We're
going to do standard questions, but I got to use the restroom first. Okay. We're going to take just a short little break. Anybody's going to use it. And then
I'm good.
We're coming back.
You're the only one.
I know, I'm the weak one. That's fine. I've drank a
Can you believe I'm this old and I have to go to the bathroom?
Oh, man.
All right, so recap that to get it.
Yeah, recap. You got to bring it back up, the model. The one that's going to be my new wallpaper on my phone and computer.
This one?
I was talking to you, and then I just looked up, and it hit me. It did that pull, that yank that I was talking about. I didn't look through all the pictures beforehand. I don't like to
ruin the surprise.
Yeah, ruin the surprise. I want to see the stuff for the first hand. It's absolutely amazing. So
I'm doing my best to keep up with him.
What we're talking about off camera is that came before the Camaro.
Yes.
And the stylistic designs and stuff like that came over on the Camaro. So I remember you talking about it. You said, hey, they came to you and said, that's a great idea, blah, blah. I want you to work on the Camaro too. So
Ed Wilburn.
There's a team already working on the Camaro. Mm-hmm. And now it's a change.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
Well, I mean, and this is typical of General Motors in that they have a landmark vehicle or a special vehicle. In some case, it could be anything. It could be a Buick, it could be a truck. When you're swimming or you're running, you're probably going to run faster if you got a buddy with you.
Competition's competition.
Or swimming.
Competition breeds excellence.
Yes.
It does. So, and Ed set this up. So we had Bob Boniface's team and our team, and Bob had been working on it. He had all the engineering kind of figured out, and everything was just pretty neat. So we came in with the benefit of that. We kind of knew what the parameters were that was going to be Zeta platform based and all that. And what we call them, and I've done this through the course of my career, as most designers, the management will set it up where you have competing teams, and we call them shootouts. We take full-size clay models, put them out on the patio, and compare them. And I would always tell my designers, this is another viewpoint. And that's why I said the patio is the most important tool in the corporation. You know why? I say, I tell my young designers, you know what's out on the patio? What, Tom? The truth. That's why it's so important. And what I mean by that is you put out there, you can have the smoothest talking designer, smoothest talking marketing guy or gal or anybody, or girl, or anybody. Smoothest talking person.
But if the janitor thinks it's ugly.
Well, no. what I'm trying to say is you can describe, you can talk, but the cars, those vehicles are it. What's there? It's either bad or good or whatever.
Or better.
You can explain all you want, but those two properties there, they tell it like it is. It's unvarnished. And it's there for everybody to see. So that's why I think, at least my experience in General Motors, they did that a lot.
That's crazy.
Sometimes you go back and fix it and come back. Sometimes it's multiple. But at any rate, long story short, both designs were awesome. Ed selected the one that we worked on to go forward. But I had that experience with previous Camaros, with Corvettes, where we had outside like Fioravante for the C6, I think, offered up some competitive proposals. That's just one example. Or maybe in-house, like we have Advanced Studios, they would bring vehicles out and we'd have these competitions.
But what you're saying is you've won.
I love that. I love doing it.
You've also won a lot. Yeah. That's
So again,
your team.
Team.
But
team.
yeah.
And I say that in all honesty because, man, the talent I was fortunate enough to work with was just absolutely amazing. You know, Sang Up Lee, now he went on to work for
Bentley,
and now he's head
running
of Genesis.
Wow.
And I got to work with global talent from all around the planet. So again, I feel blessed. And think about it, going to school, then given the responsibility of these amazing products, and then the people that came. I had a designer working with me on C7, C8, Vlad Kapitanov from Moscow. So yes, I've colluded with Russians.
This is why you weren't allowed to do podcasts when you work for GM.
But
This is why you couldn't have Instagram, because when my siblings created him one, and I get a friend request from him, and the first photo is his 69 Arctic Cat Panther snowmobile that he restored with a bunch of Ham's beer cans. And I was like, I need to shut this down immediately because he still worked there. I'm like, you can't just be posting that.
Yeah, Bill Mitchell wore a red suit. let the man have his. Let the man have his red.
So they bugged me for a long time to start an Instagram page. So okay. So they showed me how to do it. So I put a few car pictures, a few snowmobile pictures on. I pushed the button, put the phone in my pocket. As soon as I pull my hand out, ring, 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 ring. Oh, Adrienne, hi. You need to get off of that right now. You can't be showing that as a GM executive. Besides, it's a giant time suck. Get off of that right now.
But
you
truly, so yeah, I did say that. But my title included marketing and communications.
Yeah.
Doesn't it go the other way? The parents are yelling at the kids to get off the social media.
Oh, they yelled at me for enough with that Camaro, which some of the stories that we alluded to in my episode. But truly, like, and my mom and I have joked about this, is like, he's such a visionary, and I have so much admiration for how free his mind is. I don't want him to get like stuck scrolling, and I just worry about how that could potentially affect his creativity.
Could open up more.
Well, it might. I mean, I'll take.
She wasn't worried about your creativity.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just don't.
She didn't want you getting called in the office. That's exactly what it was.
It's a different world.
But I don't want you just like.
I know.
But I send him stuff every now and then that I know he'll think is funny. But I'm like, you've got better things to do with your.
Yeah. I got two more before we get into standard question stuff. So, touch briefly on, especially pre, 09? 09 was the restructure, right? Probably a very tumultuous time.
Yes.
I can't even imagine. Yep. You thought you were getting fired from some ideas. I bet you that was a time that you were like, what the hell's going on?
Well, I thought in my mind, oh my God, the corporation's going to go, the industry's going to go down, and therefore the country.
Yeah, that was.
We didn't know. I felt that way.
That was
scary.
difficult time.
But you got to hand it to the administration. They came around, and I think they
took a little work. Took a little work.
They got a huge education in terms of how important the automotive industry is to the fundamental economic base of this country. I'm no economist, so I can't speak to it, and how important the pickup truck, to me, is the foundation of this economy. Argue with me, but everything. Think about what's connected to that, whether it's the computers that the companies buy, or the material that's mined to make the molds. It's just vast. Again, human brain can comprehend the impact and globally that it has on. That's why all the countries, they want to have an automotive industry, right? Why is that? Because it's foundation from my view. Right.
Oh, you're right. That's something not often talked about. Prior to 2009, you had a tremendous amount of brands and platforms, shared platforms. How do you, from a design standpoint, when you're designing the vehicle, right, around a platform, I know it's, front and rear fascia generally, but you have to still have a somewhat a brand identity across shared platforms. Is that thought about at the initial design, or is that after the design of the vehicle's done, then it's kind of like, all right, now we got to do the Pontiac version, we got to do this version, we got to do that? How does that work?
I think it's understood from a production standpoint. Usually in the advanced area, it's free thinking.
Doesn't matter.
But when you're a production studio and they fund a bona fide program, whether it's going to be shared or you're going to use carryover components. Like, there are discussions that I'm not necessarily in. Sometimes I would be in, say, for Corvette, we're going to share a platform, we're going to share componentry or whatever. And I think what the corporation tries to do is make those as all the non-visible areas as much as they possibly can. But I think that's known in general up front. What's going to be shared? Like in many cases, I'll use the Camaro as an example. We always had to share a door with Pontiac, and at the front of the production programs, it'd be kind of free thinking. But more often than not, if not every time when I was involved in those cars, is that the shared door would end up be driven by the Camaro. Why? Because they sold more Camaros. Then
it's Camaro first, Firebird second.
Chevy first. Pontiac second. So then again, that's just maybe totally different. I don't know, but that was my impression. And so
there's a side eye.
I went for the Camaro SS over the WS6 because the Camaro was lighter.
Yeah, but the WS6,
that was the only reason.
That emblem on the back, the WS6 and that stacked wing.
Yeah, you were in trouble.
You were scared.
Yeah.
Scared of that thing. Mm-hmm. Scared.
Yeah, that's true. but leading up to that point, I mentioned shootouts. We would have shootouts with Pontiac Studio. And again, as a kid in there, I wasn't quite understanding why, but I look back at it now. They were all vying, whether it was John Shinala, who at the time when I was in there was chief designer for Pontiac Studio, then Jerry Palmer. They'd be out there, and they were vying who was going to get the door, whose door was going to go forward. Ultimately, it would end up being Chevrolet, but man.
That's funny.
John was gunning and when I worked in both Chevrolet and Pontiac studios, working on Firebird and Camaro, we were hard on, directed towards capturing, being the theme for both cars, in terms of setting the tone for which door was to be selected. We didn't just give in and say, Camaro, we're going to take whatever you get. We fought for that.
Now, great segue, Tom. You've touched on it several times about the competition, right? You talk about competition breeds excellence. You're competing against teammates. You're competing against other design within the company. We also touched on the secret design studios and try to keep all that stuff secret.
For a while.
How much are you aware of what what Chevrolet and Dodge, or what Ford and Dodge is doing at the time design wise?
I think we stay abreast of what they were doing, what their trends were, tried to guess. kind of where they were headed. You know, we would have sometimes we bring in current models of competitors, and that's another example of where we would use the patio. We would have the competition out there. How do we stack up?
Probably more so against Ford. Nobody ever. No offense to Ralph that
Oh no, we had them all.
Said shit about your C8, but I won't bring that up.
Wow. Okay. Everybody has a right to their opinion.
There for a while, nobody was really worried about what Mopar was doing in the muscle car world. It was you and Ford.
Is there any competition for the Corvette?
Well, right now we view our competition when we came out with C7 and C8. Actually started with C6 is become more of a global car. There's a picture in there, somewhere in there, of Herb Fischel, who was the executive director for motorsports for General Motors, arguably the most powerful man in that realm at the time on the planet. Think about all Chevrolet racing, high performance, incredible visionary. He's the one that actually wanted to establish Corvette as a global competitive vehicle against anything.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, that one. So he asked me to do a painting, so I did a painting of.
You painted that?
Somewhere in the future.
Just throw it off. It's not a big deal. I just painted that off. That's one of my many talents.
Somewhere in the future, Corvette winning Le Mans.
I see it.
So this is the Mulsanne Strait.
Oh, yes.
And it's like a morning scene.
But all you did, you captured all that with just that guardrail and just that tree line? Yeah. That's amazing. It honestly is amazing.
So you can tell where that was.
I know that as soon as I saw it, I knew exactly where that is. Mainly from the movie, but absolutely. Thank you. It's an iconic.
Yeah. So Herb, he's retired at this point, but he commissioned me to do this painting while at work. So I did that. There was yelling and screaming around that painting, throwing paintbrushes and stuff.
Was there?
Passion. Oh yeah, it was passion doing that painting. Well, think about it. It's morning light. I was too young to remember. Backlit. It rained. It got light. I set myself for a really difficult thing. Anyways, so he used that to sell GM management to drive Corvette back into global racing, and that's his vision was what got us re-entered Corvette back into the Le Mans series. And from then on, Corvette looked at not just domestic competition, but global competition. So it stacked up C6. We did a lot of testing in Germany and evaluating Porsche. Porsche has always been like a competitor, right? 911. So there's also stories there. But so C6 was the first attempt at that. It's smaller. Porsche is smaller. By the way, the Corvette is about the same dimension as Porsche 911.
Is it really?
Pull them up. And what the difference is visually, the Porsche is rounded. The Corvette is more square-cornered, So you see that visual length.
It starts setting lines versus being a blurred line.
I don't know, half inch of each other.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the current ones, how that stacks up to C8. I haven't compared those two, but I'm looking at C6 and then C7. So that carried forward. So C5R was super successful, and GM found, and it was Herb's vision that in order to gain credibility as a sports car, you have to compete globally, specifically in Le Mans series, if not F1, to have cred in Europe as far as a car that's coming up to par.
Yep.
Who was the one behind the whole Punisher Corvette and
Punisher Corvette?
Oh, the Jake logo?
Oh, the Jake?
Yeah.
There's different stories on that. Different people will claim ownership of that. I don't remember exactly where that came from because I got so many stories. That became a mascot for Corvette. It's kind of this hypothetical. And they even have little videos and stuff of like old, looks like old footage, like the early 60s, 61, 62 cars with little Jakes on them. So it was like this, they created this legend, all throughout Corvette's race history, L88s and all that.
So who has the painting?
Strand and all that.
Who has the painting now?
Herb does.
Herb
Fischel has it. So at any rate, so C7 had continued, and that we were compared to supercars. The front engine was compared to Ferraris, Porsche, obviously, Lamborghinis, and then C8. You mentioned earlier about a profound moment that you really remember. This is it. Just like you said, when Camaro went away and then brought it back. I happened to sit in a conference room, not much bigger than this, in my studio. We had about 10 people in there. Called it the POPs meeting, the program operations meeting. And Tad Jector was sitting right where you are, Phil. And he says, it's time to go mid-engine with a Corvette. Just like
I'm
that.
closer to the mic and say that again.
It's time to go mid-engine with a Corvette.
He just says it like that.
Yeah.
No, there's no warning that's coming. That's a surprise.
Can you imagine how profound that is? And
Yeah.
again, I started working with Corvette in '82, and think of the awesome cars, the mid-engines and stuff that had been experimented with before I even got there throughout Corvette's history. I mean, the first, Zorro's Vision was mid-engine. That Serve 1 was mid-engine, right?
Yep, I know.
Those. Yeah.
My son he's about to turn 18, and from a very, very young age, he's been Corvette everything for no particular reason. Just every time he can pick out every single one, he knows the colors and stuff like that. That's his dream, is to one day have one. I've always appreciated the look of them. Have never aspired to own one. Never been that until the C8. When the C8 came out, and I think I read somewhere too, and I think you were saying that in an article about, don't worry about designing for the current audience. You're designing for the future audience.
Well, you designed for the 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And I'm hearkening back, thinking of when I was in third grade.
Well, when you design the C8, like, when I see that come out, I'm like, oh, that's the first Corvette out of any of the Corvettes, maybe besides a split window, but that would be more for like putting in the garage and looking at. Like, I don't want to own it to drive it, really. But the C8 was like, oh shit, now that's something I would want to own. That's something I would want to experience. It's something I would want to drive. It's something I would want to have. And the mid-engine, and there's all kinds of talk online and in circles and stuff like that or whatever about how much. Where does Ferrari and the 488 from the engine design and a lot of that kind of stuff, where does that come into play with that C8?
Oh, you want to bring up that one slide you wanted to bring up?
Which one?
The one with all the
yeah.
Ducati and all that.
Yeah. I will say, I have an appreciation and a connection for all of the Corvettes through the generations. But to your point, like the C8 is truly the first one that I'm like, one day I want to own. I want to own one of those.
It's the first one that's, again, I take the 63 out of it, right? The 63 is a 63.
Iconic.
It's an iconic thing. That's not even a vet. It's a split window, right? It's a thing. Then
a 78 guy.
I'm not. There's generations, right? And they all have their place, but this is the first time to where you're like, it's almost from a car enthusiast, but specifically an American car enthusiast, where you stick that chest out a little bit and you're like,
we own this. This is ours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that pride of like, oh, y'all do some cool shit, but look what we just did, right? And not being a vet enthusiast, I've never owned a Corvette, right? I've driven a shit ton of them, but I've never went and purchased a Corvette. And now it's kind of like, yeah, America. Yeah, it's mid-engine. It's flat plane crank. It sounds awesome. It's got one of the best DTC transmissions out there. All those things where you're like, hell yeah. And I guess my question is like, there has to be that thought process behind the scenes of like, it's time. We have to do all those things.
Yes, that's true. And it's time, as I mentioned, when Taj made that announcement. I'm sure he had discussion with Mark Royce before he rolled it out to our small leadership team there.
Maybe he didn't ask permission.
Yeah, no, he did. So imagine how profound that was, being witnessed and being in that room. Again, coming from this is going through my mind, being that third grader, coming from that bus, getting off the school in Deep Haven to that moment when you said that.
Wow.
Yeah, and so again, unbelievable. So
But you got to play it cool. You be like, yeah, no problem. I've been thinking about that. Let's do that.
Going through the Corvette Indie, and I can tell you there are other examples where I worked on some mid-engine proposals along the way that never saw the light of day. And it just wasn't ready. And from a business standpoint, everybody was very frustrated. I'm sure they were frustrated before I even got there. Why wouldn't we just do that? But the rationale was with the C7 ZR1, that maxed out from GM's perspective, from engineering, from Tadge's team's perspective, maxed out the performance of that configuration. They just couldn't, maybe incrementally, but that's when it was time to move. And because we had tried so many, I've experienced so many times when they tried to make the transition, and I'm sure many came before me, but that was the moment right there. That car, the C7 ZR1 is an amazing machine. And to that point, I mean, there are people to this day, internal and exteriors, it's not a Corvette unless it's front engine, I remember it wasn't a Corvette if it didn't have flip-up headlights. So I had people that wanted to punch me in the nose.
Yeah, the round taillights thing. Yeah, but that changed. Well, that was great.
And it was those young folks, non-traditional customers that gravitated to it right away.
If the young customers, to your point, exactly, if the young customers don't give a shit and it's only the core audience and you keep making the core audience,
you're going to run out of time.
Well, that core audience gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
I remember you used to always tell people to stick their hands in the taillights of the C8 to understand the...
People were expecting it to have a lens over it.
Yeah.
And they go, oh. Yeah, and that inspiration came from that 65 and those 65 Impala taillights because they're sculpted. I mean, look at those taillights. They go in and out. They get a little bullet coming out. Somebody's paid a lot of attention to that little simple thing.
Versus just being, lens.
So make it sculpture with the rest of the car. So at any rate, and again, to that youthful point, I had a very young team, crossed a lot of cultures. Again, I'm from Russia, from Korea, from initially from Brazil, all over the world. Men and women from all over the world were involved in that car. And so it's truly global. And I kind of relied, I really kind of opened it up for the team to express what they felt was most significant design-wise there. And we knew C8 going into it had to be extra to make come out, because you're going out right off the bat and you're going to be competing with Ferraris and Lambos and all these other super exotic cars right out of the chute. So we pushed it. And it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And just judge. You can just look at the people, how they respond to them. And you know what? I would tell you, the car isn't necessarily for everybody. I would say to people, I prefer I run into people say they prefer the C7 or the C8, or like yourself, they prefer the C8 over the C7. That's what you want. You don't want, a car for everybody. You don't want a Camaro.
I think the C7 looks amazing.
Yeah,
I think it looks great.
It's timeless.
It's the best of the modern Corvettes, right? You can see the progression, and it gets to the point to where you're like, that's the best you can do with it. I think it looks amazing.
I give it all to the sculptors.
But it doesn't where it's like,
it's not exotic.
It's not exotic enough for me to spend the money on it.
Somebody told you that it or that you felt that it wasn't crazy enough.
What, C7?
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard every.
But I think you've said that. You've told me that you felt like it wasn't crazy enough.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I will say though, when C8 came out, when they made the announcement, like you've always shared with me that that's your driving force with design, is that you're designing for the next generation. Mm-hmm. And when C8 was announced, I mean, within minutes, the content creators and visualizers and digital artists on Instagram, I mean, my Instagram feed was flooded with edits of C8. And I'm like, that was kind of like, not that I didn't, I mean, I believed in you and the team from day one, but seeing that come to life, scrolling through and seeing the reception so quickly, people wasted no time to dig into what that car could potentially mean for the aftermarket and for the enthusiast industry in general. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I as a marketing communications, as a storyteller that I'd never seen with Corvette before.
When he tells you it's time for the mid-engine, how much of that engine infrastructure, that platform, was that all ideology? Was that just an idea? Was any of it started, packaging and like, I got this idea, we could do this? How far along was that?
I think I can't say for certain because, again, it's so huge. They might have had some engineering things going.
Engineers probably got their same Skunk Works Studio X like you guys, right?
Oh, yes, they do.
So everybody's...
And again, I can tell you, Corvette design team, we always had stuff going in the background or underneath the desk or in a different, in a different file somewhere. They work on at lunchtime or home, or if they got a little extra time during the day. That's been going on since day one of Corvette.
That's passion.
You're right. That's passion, Adrienne. And it's universal and it's timeless. People ask me, how long did it take you guys to do the C8? And I said, 75 years. and that's an accurate answer because all the things that have been done throughout history on Corvette led up and in one way or another influenced the C8. You think about it, from Zora's vision of being a mid-engine platform to Bill Mitchell was right there.
I mean, as crazy as the stories are about Bill Mitchell, but I mean, the fact that he said, ain't nobody telling us we can't do it, and we're going to get this far along behind the scenes because I don't believe this is going to last forever. And when they come back and they're like, all right, you know what, you can make race cars, they're like, guess what? It's already figured out. Already done. We're just gonna put a top on this one. This one was like experimental, but guess what? It's gonna be a car. Yeah. That takes balls.
Guts.
Yeah, and some of that stuff wouldn't be around. Now, there's all kinds of other stories about everything else, but regardless,
you can say that about anything. You say that about architecture, music. People taking chances. You have to. That's where you make. That's where you.
Ragged edge, Phil. You got to be on the ragged edge.
The success stories are great.
Hey, you know what, you guys?
We're not talking about the failures.
You guys have examples right down there.
Right.
You can tell. I've seen just in the short tour you gave us. I've been around a few cars. I've seen things that I've never seen before. They're beautifully done and well thought out and very much appreciated. So I'll tell you the guys that right now. I'm not just saying that because
I appreciate
I'm on the radio.
And we got an incredible team that makes all that stuff happen, and it's all passion driven. And
and you guys look for that. You know how to recognize, don't you, in people, whether it's someone sweeping the floor or somebody just,
push like
the metal.
Yeah,
sand in the Bondo.
The passion makes all the late nights, all the cuts, all the being away from this, all through it. Yeah, that's the fuel. Standard question. Go ahead.
I got one more for you.
What you got?
Looking at all these Corvettes when you're designing the first one, do you know that you're going to have a Z06 and then a ZR1 coming down the line? Yes. And you're like, let's pull that back, like that crazy hood design that's going to be for the Z06, that's going to be for the ZR1. We can't put it on the base model.
Phil, that's a great question, and I'll tell you why. Because starting in maybe C6, but really, I'll tell you, maybe it's my most recent memory, the C8, we had the Stingray initially, and then we had the Z06, these sketching and some scale models that were right next to it, and thinking about the ZR1. The ZR1, when I left, was just starting in clay and was 2D at that point. But we had the Stingray, the Z06, and the C8R all in the studio at the same time. So we were doing the race car too at the same time. So if you go back to that, so we would know up front. Okay. And if you go back to
he have the CR1 engine on here, doesn't he?
Yes, and but before we go to that, that's a good.
Oh, you're driving. You're driving. I'm not. You're driving. You're driving.
Go back to the Ducati shot, the one with all the engines. So
down. I think down.
Yeah.
And now this goes all the way back to building model cars and working on cars and things. So when the program first kicked off and they outlined the content of the program, these are 20-foot boards, by the way. They go up and down. These don't roll, but they go up and down. So I came in, and the engineering and the program team had put up a spreadsheet. I had my designers put up a spreadsheet of content. And they had, I'll think about this. This is the first mid-engine Corvette, right? Production Corvette. So they had a list of content for the engine compartment, which is, to me, it's what it's designed around, right?
It's a jewelry box.
It's provided. Yes, I'll get to that point in a minute too. So you're framing it up really well. It's
okay.
Awesome.
All right.
It's awesome. So I looked at the list, and it's like, and they have these diagrams that go with the schedule. And what it is, they had an engine that had all these incredibly expensive and multiple carbon fiber panels covering up the engine covers, you know? I'm looking at that and go, this is a mid-engine Corvette, and the engine is the heart of the vehicle. That's what it's all about, you know? I thought, so I slept. I didn't sleep one night, and I came in and I said,
pretty standard.
Yeah. So I came in. I said, I got to thinking, well, why don't we do it like how motorcycles do it? And to me, one of the coolest motorcycles are Ducatis, and one of the digital sculptors actually had one. He was looking for a place to store it. I said, well, why don't you bring it in the studio? So they rolled it in there, and that's it parked there. And we had that. It was interesting to see how that motorcycle went around the studio.
Did you ride it?
Yeah. we have done it a few times. Anyways, so I said, I invited, and let me tell you, there's different cultures in the GM at the time. And again, this is my experience. And Powertrain was this separate entity they were bulletproof. They were, amazing. But you don't tell us what to do. We're going to give you this, and you figure it out. You work around it, right? So Jordan Lee was the chief engineer or director of engineering for small block engines. It might be high performance. I don't remember the exact type, but an amazing man and amazing team. I mean, the motors that came before that, all the LS motors. Yeah. Oh my God! So you can imagine, you guys. He'd be another one you'd want to talk to. He knows how to put very complex items that are so easily understandable, and you can visualize them. He's an amazing person. Anyways, so I called him directly. I invited him and his team to come in because I had a thought. So, and they're going, what? You want Powertrain team to come in?
Better not be telling us what to do.
Anytime someone at GM, like a member of leadership, comes in and says, I have a vision, and it's like, shit.
There we go again.
Here we go.
Another vision.
I mean,
well, not always. But so, I mean, there's always this thing because you art guys and we're engineers and we
right.
It was some of the culture, not all. So he said, "Really? Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you very much for inviting us." They were so taken back that I would invite them. To me, it was just natural. This is a team. You can't make this car on your own. You got to work together to make it happen, and in a big way.
I need to know what that intake's going to look like because this is a big part of.
Well, I invited him in, and I'm going to try and make the story real short. So we had 14, 15 people that I'd never met before, men and women that are on the power, that then called Powertrain. Now it's called Propulsion, I think. I said, and I had these formulated in my mind. I said, we're covering up this motor on this profound car. What if we looked at it like motorcycles do, in this case, Ducati, where it's not adding more cost, just pay attention to how you execute it. Every nut, bolt, fastener, material, how you make these shapes. We don't want to compromise one fraction of a millimeter that would take away from performance. But I think if we work together, we can turn this into something not only incredibly phenomenal from a performance standpoint, but it can be beautiful too. So I said, look at the motorcycle. And I walked around that bike and just showed little, like internal drive fasteners, things like that. Beautifully machined pieces of aluminum, or how stamping was made. You could tell it was designed care. Why? Because they know it's going to be exposed. Customers are going to see it, and it's a sculpture. Let's look at it like a sculpture. I said. No, then it popped into my head. I said, the engine on the C8 has got to be like a jewel, and the body is the setting, and that clicked. I didn't mean it for have that kind of impact, but Jordan would say that's what really galvanized them into
That's awesome.
working with us to say that helped them to visualize what I was talking about. And so, I mean, we had some carbon fiber panels and things, but they went into it in earnest. And if you study that 20-foot board, again, keep everything visible. As I was saying, we'll keep everything visible so everybody understands. It augers down into that one image down there on the lower left. This that white square. Middle left. Go up higher. On the next board. Okay, on the left there, that's the timing. And then you look at the plan view. Those are all the team leaders with all their contact information that we could call and invite. You're welcome to come to the studio anytime. Before it was a little bit, hey, we'll invite you. Come in here anytime. Then back out, Adrienne, please. It even gets down to the schedule of the fasteners, every nut and bolt, colors. It drove some of them crazy because they'd never done this before. Wow, we just want this faster. But they got it. This team got into it. We worked together.
Yeah, probably gives them a little bit of a change of pace too, and some creativity.
They'd never done this before,
right?
And to me, it was just natural. Even how the plumbing went, how the wire. You guys know because you do it here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like that before, at least in my experience. We did a little bit starting with C5, C7, but not to this extent, because it was so important. So even to the shock tower structure there, usually that's engine. You can zoom in on that one. That's right in the middle of the bottom board. Yeah, right there. I mean, we worked with that's an incredibly important structural member. I mean, that's taking all that load. And
how it looks good when that hatch is flipped up. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, is it exactly perfect how we sketched it? No, but it's better than it would have looked if we hadn't had that collaboration. So I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of is working with these incredibly talented, smart men and women together and making this happen, because I think that was a profound experience.
Well, you can tell that it had to have been a collaborative effort, because the first time, I mean, there's been a plastic engine cover, right, that was kind of stylized, right? But at the same time, most of the vets down the line, that you pop the hood and it's a motor, right? It's like, oh, that's the new one. It's got a cover. That is part of the car, right? Yeah. And it's like what other supercar manufacturers have done with that. Is that a 488 engine in the bottom left corner?
It could be, yeah. We looked at Ferrari.
I remember seeing a 488 get rolled into the design center.
Could be. And that's when I first realized, because again, this is Tom talking, paddle shifters, kind of cool on cars, but to me they're kind of a novel. To me they seem like a novelty. I wanted to stick or
unless
whatever,
they the correct way.
Yeah.
If they the correct way, then they're good.
I mean, it's kind of fun.
Video game sounds.
But we drove a 488 out at the proving grounds, and I'm like, because we were talking about, we're not going to do stick. It's going to be electronic, and it's like, I'm driving, and I have an engineer sitting next to me. He goes, you can shift now. I'm looking at the road like you do, right? And I'm watching the needle on the tack. Well, the tack's up. And I'm thinking that's 6, right? Oh no, on a Ferrari that's 9.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Says you can shift now.
Yeah.
I go, oh, click, and then but you're driving around the corner, and the profound experience I had was, front engine car you're steering like this, mid engine cars you're like this,
right?
And so that was an epiphany. And then I said, in my mind, again, this is my opinion and my observation, is that's when you got to do paddle. You can't do anything else but a paddle shifter on this next car.
Yep.
You don't want that. And believe me, all our cars are sticks. We love sticks. I met her. She had all stick cars. Carolyn did. She took me for a scary. That's when I said, man, I love this girl. She took me for a scary ride on Chevy Chase up in Pasadena, those hills up there, in her brother's tricked out 240Z. Which I think is the coolest Japanese car ever.
Oh yeah, it's a hot rod.
Well, it's just to me the best Japanese car. So anyway, she took me a ride, and I'm like, and I'm from Louisiana. I come back from Louisiana, Flatlander, and she's looking over me with this sparkle in her eye, and
and she's trying to show out.
And so anyway, that's when in my mind, it had to be that paddle. It had to be a paddle shift.
We talked about it just a couple weeks ago that there's times where you're like, I want to shift gears, but there's those cars that there's things that you just can't do that you can do with a paddle shift.
Yeah.
And when it's done right, and totally different.
Yeah.
It's not, but again, I think there's been there's been paddle shifters around for a while, right? Oh, and sure. They haven't really been.
That's like the perfect blend of like with the mechanical side of it. 'Cause we've got a bunch of customers that have Z06s and they just can't stop raving about how it's the most amazing trans.
Yes.
And you're so connected for still being a paddle shift coming from other stuff that you kind of click it and 3, 2, 1, then it shifts.
Yep.
And that's not by accident. That is incredibly well thought out. Let me tell you, every iota, every millimeter of anything is so well thought out by that team led by Ted Schechter.
Yeah, maybe I can get a friends and family discount. You never know.
Well, especially if it's a conquest sale.
Corvette has always been the gold standard of.
Does the Geo Metro count as a conquest?
Do you have one? See, does he have one?
It's got a forward.
I'll buy one if it gets me into that club. I promise I will. Corvette has always been.
It's always been
the Halo.
It's always been the Halo, but it's always also been the gold standard of cross-functional collaboration within GM. It really is the pinnacle example for the enterprise, as you mentioned, that everyone believes in the passion of that car is just, it's so much bigger than anyone really realizes. And when you have the honor and the privilege to work on that vehicle in any capacity, no matter how significant it is, you catch on to that passion and that magic very quickly. And everyone seems to just kind of gravitate toward how can we make this vehicle, the story, the performance, the design, anything, the best it can possibly be, which I think is pretty powerful.
And usually it was 1 and 1 equals 3.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's, again, I will tell you, that's probably one of the more profound experiences I had was these people working together, whether it's a design team that came from all over the world or the development team with Corvette. I venture to say in Truck Studio, all the other experiences I had, the collaborating with people, you gain heights that you just couldn't do or maybe even not even imagine, and Corvette is certainly that. I mean, you think about it, the people that are selected to be on that team they're pinnacle people, and so you have to listen to what they say. That's not to say we didn't have our moments. We had some
easy.
knockdown, drag out discussions.
That's when the best. That's when the best comes out.
Yeah.
But that, if you aren't pushing hard enough, unless you're on the edge, and you're a little frightened. And a lot of times people are maybe a little frightened. It's kind of like you're tapping around in a cave without the lights on. And that's where the model comes in. That helps calm everybody down. You either see I understand it, or you get together and move something on that
it's tangible.
Model. It's tangible, more than maybe even on a screen.
Right.
Yeah. It's so important.
When you have those moments of those realization moments of like, oh my gosh, we're actually doing this right now. The reaction is not I've made it or I've done this. The first word that pops into your mind is always we've done this. We've done this incredible thing together. And, I think that's something that's very special with the advanced design studios, the performance design teams, and, Chevrolet performance in the communities that I had the privilege of working in when I was at GM. Like, there's something very special about those like enthusiast oriented high performance teams that, it really is all about what can we all do together to make this the best that it can possibly be.
Yep.
What's the pressure like carrying that on your shoulders that you're representing? You're representing America basically with America's supercar. Like, you better step up to the plate and knock this thing out of the park.
Phil, you ask these incredibly awesome questions. Well, both of y'all do, but that's pretty. I will tell you.
He didn't think about it till now.
Well, I have, because I've been asked that question before, and you try not to think about it too much. I've had a lot of sleepless nights over the years. But you know how you get through that? First of all, you're going to do the best you can do. And let's go right back, and I'm not joking. Look at this team that I'm fortunate and blessed to work with, whether it's the design team or the engineers. We're going to make just a kick-ass Corvette or a kick-ass truck. I'll tell you, a truck's a performance vehicle too. People would ask me, well, why are you responsible for Corvette and trucks too? I said, well, trucks are every bit high performance as Corvette.
Yep.
You know, they are in their own right.
And
They're
passionate.
Passionate.
Yeah.
You guys know, you know.
And revenue drivers.
Well,
Yeah.
well, they are. They're, you know, without trucks, everything's based on trucks.
Right.
I've come to understand that. So you pull up to a light, you're next to the 250 Super Duty or the Ram or whatever, and you're checking out how high are their mirrors. Where are the mirrors high as yours? Who's got the bigger wheels and tires, you know? And sometimes you'll scoot, just see what they'll do, you know? It's high performance in another matter, you know, in another realm, you know? So that's the explanation I give. That's why I guess I was given the assignment to do them both. Let me tell you, I had hair when I started there. So I go from the studios I had the Corvette Camaro studio, and they had the truck studio across the hallway. So I'd take my hat and turn around one way for trucks and turn around the other way for Corvette Camaro. Totally different, but every bit, just all the things we're talking about this evening.
Same.
The passion, the collaboration, the talent in every discipline equal. And I guess I would venture to say that in every experience I had with all the brands that I've worked with, whether it's Pontiac or did a couple of Buicks, Cadillac, the 16, worked on, the other Cadillac I was responsible for was the Escalade, the last generation. I mean, the passion around, I didn't understand it, but it hit me like someone ran over me with an aircraft carrier. What the significance of a Cadillac grill? You know, the shape of it, the texture, so emotional, so passionate throughout the corporation. Then I got it and I responded. So it's equal in different aspects of not only our corporation, but I'm sure the entire industry, whether it's Porsche or Ferrari or, Stellantis or Ford or whatever. Some of the guys that worked at Ford worked with me on cars throughout the years. Sometimes you move around and all that. But I to answer your question, Phil, is that, first of all, you got so many things to draw from. How do you come up with something new? This is so good. The C7 is so good. How do you beat that, Well, you think about what's going on in the world that's happening so fast, the technology, whether it's manufacturing or computers, artistic fashion style trends. That's why we talked about inspiration from aircraft, that stuff. And why has that been an eternal source of inspiration? They're high performance, they're leading edge technology. Their design is driven by form, and it's very purposeful in their mission.
And they're mysterious.
And they're mysterious.
You don't see a lot of them.
Good point.
You got to hunt. You got to hunt to see them.
There's mystery, but there's this beautiful elegance about them that you understand immediately when you see it. And you want that in vehicles too. In the 50s, they interpreted that stuff literally with the fins and rocket stuff. Currently, it's inspired. It's kind of translated. It's reinterpreted in a modern automotive way. At least that's my impression. But these incredibly talented people, environment, and all these different sources of inspiration to draw from that are current, and you just focus on the task at hand. And what else calms you down when you see sketches that our designers do, whether it's an idea, you give them like you plant a seed, but I've always been the person that liked to kind of give them a couple words, i.e. is the example I gave you of Bill
Bentley.
And these are guys that I hold in my mind as leadership kind of icons. Let them run, and then you see them either on the screen or we call it the VR room, where you had 20-foot screens wrapping around, and you put up these sketches like a collage of sketches, and you go, oh, this stuff is so freaking awesome. There's so many things to choose from. That is wild, man. Take some of that and you see that, then you sleep really good at night because you say, I can take that and turn it into something really cool.
That's cool.
Working with a team. Then it's all right. And again, not that you don't have your moments, because there's certainly those throughout the process.
We're going.
Help?
Yeah,
It helps.
Yeah, dead on. I like your comment earlier too about how design something for a 10-year-old kid that would be blown away with, because it's just so perfect. It's like even showing I have an 11-year-old son, 8, 9, 10 years old, didn't know what any of these brands were. You just see a Ferrari, it's like, oh, that thing's awesome.
And you
no
never
idea
forget
the
it.
brand, no idea why. It's just that silhouette, the look.
Shape.
Strikes you. There's something. That's what's special about the automobile. There's something that has this human connection more than any other product or anything on this planet ever. There's some. That's the magic
because
of the
it moves.
automobile. It's dynamic.
It's in motion.
Good point.
It's dynamic.
Good point, Adrienne. That's dynamic. There's so many elements to it. When one of my goals at work was to bring back the Stingray. That was a personal mission of mine. I tried it on the C6, and rightly so. Ed said, and if you look at some of the media, some of the pictures of the early C6s, the clay models and things, if you look on some of the pictures I've seen in the magazine, there's a little cardboard Stingray on the fender. Keep an eye out for that.
I've seen it.
I sketched that out and I gave it to our graphics people. Dennis Finos, who's another phenomenal graphics designer. He did all the stuff that's Corvette, Chevrolet, all that. And he developed the Stingray logo. You can pull up that Stingray badge if you want. And put it on the C6, and Ed said, rightly so, this car, we haven't moved the needle enough. We're not ready for that yet. And that's served as inspiration for the C7. Oh, yeah? I'll give you a Stingray. And that was one of my inspirations for when we started C7. I'm going to give you Stingray.
You don't think it's ready? It's about to be ready.
Right, and he was right.
Yeah.
And then I remember one day he did say, because that's one of my driving forces to do something special on the C7. He said that, and it's not just the way it looks, but it's everything about C7. It was such a leap above C6.
It's the way the presence that it has and the way it makes you feel.
Well, that and just everything about it.
Yeah.
It was deep. It wasn't superficial. Yeah. And then to validate that, so I have one of the prototype cars. They call them captured test fleet cars. And I was driving to work, and usually I take the freeway and get off and go right in the tech center. I forget why I didn't, but I'll take surface streets back. And I remember it was early in the morning. I stop at a stop sign, and I was going through a neighborhood area, and there's some kids waiting on the corner for the bus. I drive by in that thing, and these kids are talking. They turn to that, and one of the kids goes, "Stingray!" Think about that.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, I had the windows down, and they watched that car go by. I said,
"That's nuts."
I said, "We did it." I said, "We did it."
That's nuts.
It couldn't have been framed up any better than that. To me, that was validation for what we did and that we did the right thing. And that goes all.
Yeah, that gives me chills. That's wild.
Isn't that
That's
really,
wild.
That really happened. I'm not making that story up.
That's crazy. All right, we're gonna go to standard rapid fire questions. Right before I forgot, I was gonna say something, Andrew. Now again, to Andrew off camera. So sooner or later, people are going to see your face, right? And they're going to be like, "Holy shit, that dude's good looking." But before then,
Smart too,
right? Before then, my biggest takeaway when I was seeing that painting, right? I still think that painting's fucking amazing, and I'm looking at all this stuff. My takeaway is yeah, you're a good looking dude, right? But you've got to treat her so well, because your talents are never going to even compare to her dad's talents. That's a talented dude, right? I mean, are you good at
He built you up enough to
people
just
make me look good.
Are you good at like pickleball or what? Like what's?
You've never even played pickleball.
He's
I'm
good
just-
at whatever he
Hey.
does.
But you're good at karate.
He's off camera. I got the shot.
But I will say, so and we talked about this in the episode we just recorded, that I've made a concerted effort throughout my career to keep my career and my dad's career very separate. And one of the things that I've come to terms with in my time outside and away from GM is that something that I've always wanted to do was to really, really actually lean into that relationship with my dad and how much he has inspired me and driven me throughout my career. And I never wanted it to come off that I wasn't proud of him. And that's something that I've never really been able to share with the enthusiast and the industry community. And, yeah.
Well, you were in a tough place. Like, it wasn't hard. It wasn't easy before working for the same company and different things to always be, yeah, but my dad, yeah, but my dad, yeah, but my dad, yeah, but my dad.
It may have been a bit of an irrational fear, but I probably took it to an extreme that I kept our careers very separate. But it is something that, like, I can't say anything about my own career experiences or my life experiences without that all coming back around to the passion and support and inspiration that my dad and my mom have both instilled in me my whole life. And I'm sure it'll come through in this video as I've kind of sat back and listened to my dad recount some of these stories, some that I've heard and some that I haven't, that I'm still very much in awe and inspired by both of my parents and the just all that they have to share with the world and the experiences that they have had. It's really been affected me very deeply throughout my life, and I'm very grateful for them every day.
Well, hey, cheers with our empty glasses.
I want to try some of that.
Yeah, we need to get some more.
You gotta try some of this maple syrup.
But now you can. Yeah. If they would ever just come visit you, you could tell them that all the time.
Well, now they have.
It's not the lack of wanting to. And we're here now.
You're here now.
We'll come back.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's pour some
fun,
up.
guys.
Standard questions.
Yeah, we got to do this.
Favorite car movie?
Really finish that.
You know,
I'll share with you.
there's so many. I guess I have to say favorite car movie.
Oh, that's good.
Probably Fast and Furious movies.
Really?
Really?
I like those.
I didn't see that coming.
I didn't see that coming.
Well, and I heard you guys talk about
Corvette Summer.
Vanishing Point. I think that movie's
I love
awesome.
that.
You know, I think maybe because you guys are too
I
young.
had a hard time watching some of that.
Well,
with
you know, I
with
think
you.
I think it
It's
might be
tough
a
to watch
generational
it.
thing.
Yeah.
But man, because I'm a kid of the '60s, I mean, it was so cool. The
soundtrack.
the blind the radio, the pirate radio.
What was
host.
his name?
I
couldn't remember last time, but
It was not a good movie.
And then, well, it might not have been good, but I think it's cool because, and again, whoever did that movie understood the cars because you always heard that car motor.
The car part was
Yeah.
great. The cars part.
I don't know about story. I don't care about story. I don't know about those cars. And
So I say about the
Jesse's
movie
running
Driven.
The theme. Yeah, I mean, you put me on the
Driven,
spot.
yeah.
There's
That was
so
awful.
many.
Great car movie.
Everybody likes Bullet. I have a sleeper for you. It's weird.
Okay.
It's a Robert Altman movie. Brewster McCloud.
Oh my gosh.
There's a car chase scene in there. It's pretty cool.
Brewster McCloud. I
know
don't think I
him
know
or the
that.
movie.
Yeah. I don't know the movie.
Bird doo doo McCloud. Bird doo doo. Check it out.
Yeah. Ellie's going to have to find some Brewster McCloud and put it in right now.
Jesus Christ.
Do you remember? You guys are too young. He was kind of a cult actor, Bud Cort. He's like a Poindexter looking guy with glasses. See, that's way before your time.
Bud Cort.
He was like the cult anti-hero movie star in late 60s, early 70s.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, you guys, and he was there for a few years and gone, I think. Harold and Maude. You know that movie? You guys don't.
No.
Natural Born Killers.
No. All right, guys.
Harold Maude.
Harold Maude.
Can I make one suggestion?
Yeah, we need to see some more old movies.
You have to see Harold and Maude.
Really?
Yes.
All right. I'll make a note.
Movie.
I love movies. I like finding movies I haven't seen.
But you got to put yourself in a 1969 psychedelic frame of mind. And however you do that, that's up to you. But
I've got a couple of ways I know how to do it. So.
You know, whether put some music on, but you got to watch that movie. And then if you get through that, you go, hey, you know, there's you got to think of it as art and cultural, period cultural art. So Harold and Maude.
Lubbock, Texas psychedelic or like art center psychedelic? Which one?
A little bit of both.
All right.
And by the way,
Like
Harold,
licking an armadillo.
Yeah, it's just
Harold does
Lone Star.
He's a custom car builder. I'm surprised you guys don't know that movie.
Harold and Maude.
He modifies cars. That's all I'm going to tell you.
It's the first. It's in 3 years. It's the first reference. But I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it this weekend.
And then get back when you tell me it's complete crap. But
No,
let her know, or you can contact me. Harold.
Oh, don't worry, I'll put you all.
And then Brewster McLeod.
Brewster McLeod and Harold and Maude. I hope people are listening right now.
And I can tell you, I'll give you a hint about Brewster McLeod. I'll say one word: Astrodome.
All right.
Okay.
That's going to be our new. That's going to be our new Groupon. It's going to be go ahead and enter Astrodome below for 20% off.
Oh boy!
All right, next up,
Bullet. You can't go wrong with it.
Bullet's a good one. Best piece of advice you've ever received or given.
Well, the best piece of advice I've ever given. Well, I don't know if I've ever given. Is telling people how important that patio was. The truth.
That's where the truth's out.
That's where the truth is. Probably that been given to me is keep your mouth shut and listen.
It's good.
You don't do that though.
He just said the best piece of advice
And
you've
I don't
ever.
say that in a critical. I don't say that in a critical way.
I just said it was a good piece of advice. I don't do it either. I should probably listen to it. But I just
I don't think anyone in this industry does that very well. That's why we're our own little special.
Well, you know, the passion gets ahead of you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it comes out. I remember countless times out there in front of people saying something, and it's like, ooh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes it happens. Ragged edge, right?
Yeah, that
Ragged
happens
edge.
a lot in that seat.
It does it right there in that seat.
Carol would say, once it's out there forever.
Can't unring that bell. That's what they say.
Yeah. Oh,
Once it's rung, it's hard to. You can walk it back, but it's been rang.
but sometimes it's passion. The passion gets ahead of your thoughtfulness.
Yeah, I've try recording it. That's a fun time.
Oh, yeah.
Learn from my mistakes there a few times. All right, changing it up a little bit. Out of any car that you have been a part of, leading the design or being a part of the design, what's the truest to the original design that the production ended up being?
Oh, I have to say the Camaro.
I was going to
The
say
Gen 5?
Yeah, and not far behind that is the C7. That's pretty close to the initial concept. Can I tell you one more quick story about
Tell
Ed
it.
Welburn?
Yeah.
And just to me describes what a leader he was.
Can we get him on here?
Hey, give it a shot.
All right. Let's try it.
He's
You can try. I don't know what to tell
well, he's very private, but you never know. He might do that. The VP is iconic, and they set the vision, they set the tone, they say, right throughout history. So we're working on the C7, and Ed is out there right now. We have a patio view, and I got 4 or 5 full-size models. We call them clown suits or 50-50s. We got one theme on one side and another theme on the other, and you use a mirror to kind of reflect the other side. And so you save money and energy and time and resources and floor space. So we had 3 or 4 designs, and this is decision point. Which one are we going to go forward with? And we're out there talking, and you can imagine how serious this decision that is. You got engineers out there and everything, or Tadgen's team on occasion. He picks that one. He says, this is what we're going to go forward with. And the C7 theme that's currently it is here, and in my mind, I'm going, oh. So I would never have done this. Maybe it's because just didn't have the guts, or I was stupid or whatever with the other. I've worked with 3 other other VPs, I would never. I said, okay. And I will give it 100. I'll do 100%. Get that.
Yep.
This one, Ed was very approachable. And so I thought, I'm just going to do this. He could fire me. He could say, hey, I'm going to send you to some other place in the corner, whatever. I'm going to send you to the cornfield. I said, Ed, that's awesome design. That's why it's full size. I'm going to give it 100%, but I'll tell you, give me 2 weeks on this one. And I think this is a better design. It's stronger, but I need 2 weeks on it. No, I need a little more time on it. That's what I said. And he goes, okay, you got 2 weeks. That right there demonstrates what a leader he was for us, So we came back.
He said, you're passionate about it. Give it 2 weeks to see.
Well, so we came back, and it was in front of God and Country. He pointed that one, right? And again, when someone says that, the VP says that, that's it, baby. Don't quit. You ain't question.
Can you imagine saying that to Chuck Jordan?
So, I never would have. Well, now maybe Jerry might have.
Yeah, Jerry would have.
So 2 weeks come by, review those two cars. He goes, Tom, you're right. That one does look better. I tweaked it and tuned up that one too. And he said, you're right. Now, that's an example of just superb leadership that inspires. Wow. He was such an enabler and allowed us to do. He really trusted us, and he had his opinions, and he communicated to that. But that was to me, that was an amazing experience.
Right.
He wasn't an enabler in a like a reckless way. He was an enabler in a very thoughtful and mindful way.
He enabled the talent.
Yeah.
He enabled the talent.
Yes.
He didn't dictate.
Exactly.
He didn't dictate the talent. He enabled it to.
Yeah.
He allowed me to soar higher than I ever thought I would be able to do.
Wow.
And Mike Simcoe's like that now too. He's the VP there now. In his own way, he's an incredible leader and very insightful, and that's why they get to the point where they're at. We mentioned Mark Royce a couple times. He's just an amazing visionary and someone you could talk to like we're talking right now, and so knowledgeable and passionate. And he really carries the whole corporation in terms of his creativity and his product development. I think it's just amazing.
Wow. That's a great story. It confirms, like that's why I asked earlier, but it's like Ed, everything everybody says, and because you always hear nothing but the highest of praise.
Elegant and thoughtful, kind of low. I think I only heard him swear once, and it was
really
special.
He can't be on the podcast.
I don't trust a guy that has got.
I'm just kidding. I'm doing my best not to swear here.
I know.
I was going to say you're trying real hard.
It's the best.
It's real different when you're working on stuff.
Well, we were saying it's like
you were telling me I swore too much.
Well, yeah, because it's like the movie Sandlot. It gets out there. It's like it's forever.
It's forever. I know. I know that it's my Achilles heel.
No, normally I wouldn't.
It shows a lack of education. Is what it shows.
Passion.
It shows. There's other words to use, and I don't have them.
Yeah, but it's the most versatile language, versatile word in the English language.
Sometimes it gets the point across. Honestly, sometimes it's more expedient.
Yeah,
I could say it 5 words, but the one word sometimes just gets it.
Everybody gets it. Can't deny that.
Yeah.
Your craziest favorite Woodward story, because we've never been to Woodward, but I always hear this folklore about the GM execs and designers, and this car got pulled out, and so like they're driving these and stuff like that. Is that true, or is that all just like?
Maybe you hear all the development on Woodward and Dream Cruise or Woodward in general.
Either
Woodward in
one.
general.
I mean, you hear all back in the day when the muscle cars and DeLorean and the guys developing the GTO and all that.
Yeah, they're out there.
There's those guys like the Silver Bullet and all these legendary cars that we grew up with and as kids and heard about to some extent. I didn't hear about a lot of those specifics till I got to Detroit. But I think we had, not quite that kind of development that they did in the 60s. That's where they did more on the proving grounds and that nature.
Once cell phone cameras come out, it's kind of hard to like take stuff out.
Yeah, like when I was pulled over in the Monty one time, and my parents.
We have a picture of that, don't we?
Yeah, I didn't put it in there.
Oh, you did? Oh.
No. I was
Police
pulled
cars
over.
behind her, Monty with the lights going.
And you and Mom rolled up in, I don't know, one of the hot rods. They took a picture and then left and sent it to me. And then I'm my phone.
Yeah, what do you wanted them to do? They didn't get pulled over.
No, they just wanted to troll me.
Figure
which
it
is
out.
Fair. Yeah.
He's writing you a ticket, not them.
Yeah, no, it was just about
Did we intentionally follow her? I think it was just a happenstance.
Yeah, we were just out on Woodward. She pulled me over though because I have a historic plate on my car, and you're not supposed to drive your car unless it's to or from a car show.
You're at a car show.
And
You're
that's
literally at a car show.
Verbatim, that's what I told her. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is a car show.
The street is a car show.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm at a car show.
I'm like, I don't know what you want me to say. Like,
Loophole,
on
I'll go to
both-
court.
Yeah.
Right.
She was just
Yeah.
bored. She was bored. And plus, she liked your car.
No, nobody likes my car.
Oh, yes, they do.
Oh, it's a good look.
Especially not the like the purest first gen Monty people. They
they
give
don't?
me the side eye.
Oh,
There's
really?
a picture. I don't know who took the picture in there, but there's a picture of yours. You were scrolling through. It's the front 3/4 that's lit in a certain way. That's straight out of a Tarantino.
That's a friend of mine, Matt Trombley, who's speaking of
Matt.
talent.
Yeah, we know Matt.
Yeah, brilliant photographer.
That is
Kindly shot some of this was like the only time my car has been like properly light painted.
Yeah, you need Kurt Russell in the driver's seat, and that's
Oh.
a death proof.
With plexiglass
Yeah.
separated the back seat.
Yep.
Oh my God,
Yep.
that was bad.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
bad.
as soon as the leg was out the window, I'm like, this is not going to end
Do you
well.
have that picture of you in at a mobile station or the Shell station with all the? So she pulls up in this Monte Carlo, and they see this girl getting out of it, and first they go, "Whoa!" First they see the car, and they see a female get out. That didn't put two and two together. So then she's holding court there, explaining that's her with the dark hair. All the other cars, they're hanging around her car, and she's explaining it to them.
That's awesome.
That was fun. I think I shot that picture. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, there's that other one with your car at Crook of the Hills, the black and white one.
Oh, you love that one.
I love that one. You know why? Because
Yeah.
I took it.
I know.
No, not really. It just came out okay because I think it struck me that car is gothic.
It is.
You know,
I also saw some pictures of dark hair Adrienne in this
yeah.
little gothic too.
Yeah. Oh, I was.
third goth period.
I did.
Yeah, but I think that's a gothic image there.
That is
Yeah.
cool.
Church and all that.
Yeah.
That's
So,
just.
that was all right.
I just never picture you getting out of that car.
Well, that's.
I mean, just so prim and proper, and
Yeah.
then that is the polar opposite.
Yeah, you used to see
of raw
that
and
those pictures of
hardcore
the dark hair, whatever. That was some death metal phase. I guarantee
Yeah,
it.
that was my Def Leppard phase.
Oh,
Yeah.
Def Leppard.
Yeah.
Rocking with Dockin.
Yeah. I think it was on. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
And then you go to that one. Yeah, then go to that one. So you should show the one underneath. Oh, show that one there first. Okay. To your point. Go from that. Now switch to the Washington to that one.
Oh yeah.
From that to, how about that for a contrast? Oh my God. So she's.
Oh, there's Catherine Reinhardt.
Pretty amazing.
yeah.
I think there's
girl.
a lot of people that work on those cars with those boots on.
No, there's not.
No? You don't think so?
I just.
There might be one of those dudes that wears those leggings and boots, but that's about it.
Yeah. That's another podcast.
Last but not least, your favorite law enforcement interaction story.
Oh, I know what that is.
Good.
That's a few.
If you say
I know which one that one is.
Well, that one, I got to beat that one.
Really?
You weren't there. So we're in Louisiana, right? My buddy Larry, I just painted flames on his 73 Ranchero, white Ranchero, red flames on it. He trusted me. He bought this car. He let me paint these red flames on it. You know, typical Louisiana, air shocks,
shackled up.
N60. You ever seen an N tire? It's about as wide as this table.
No.
N. Not F, not G, not R, not, N. That was the width of it. So, anyways, we went to Burger. We worked at a paper mill. He worked at one paper mill, I worked at another. He worked at Georgia Pacific, and I worked at Crown Zellerbach High School. So we get our paycheck and we go down to Tiger Town in Baton Rouge and buy records and clothes, right? And on the way back, we stop off at Burger King. So we stop off it's getting late. Stopped off at Burger King, and then we go down this country road, 2-lane road, and there's, I forget whether it was a Camaro or I think it was a Mustang or something. And we get around, we get after it, right? And we see some headlights down there, and I go, this car coming, Larry. I'm in the passenger seat. Car's coming, Larry. Just keep an eye out on that. And we're like neck and neck.
Keep an eye out on that.
Yeah. So some lights coming. I say, Larry, have you ever seen a cop on this road? I said, no, I've never seen a cop on this road. That's why we're keep it down. We're going to kick this forward. And you're going to.
That's where I get it from.
Yep. So the lights come on.
The
party lights come on. We're going, he's going,
party lights.
So we're still neck and neck.
Must be an emergency down the road somewhere.
Emergency is coming our way. So he's coming down the road. We're like, man, this guy's not giving up. I'm not giving up. So he comes and we don't give up. So he goes flying off into the road, in the ditch.
Go play chicken with a cop.
How stupid is that? With Burger King, So he goes through a barbed wire fence, and he spins around in the cow field, right? And we go by him. We're looking like this, and he's stunned.
Keep going.
Yeah. So he comes out of it, and he comes out, puts his lights back on. Well, the guy next to us, or the guys next to us, they slow down. We just haul ass. Yeah, we pull into a neighborhood and go into a driveway and turn the lights off, And we saw the Mustang go by and that right after, So he's dead. To me, that's probably the most.
It's pretty solid.
He probably was on his way to get a Diablo burger and a Dr. Pepper. You have no idea.
Yeah, so that's probably, And you're talking interaction with the cops, right? Yeah, because I've rolled a few, been in cars. I haven't driven them, but I've been in a few rolls.
Yeah.
To talk about it with dumb, stupid high school stuff,
As I did.
It's what shapes us.
It is.
Yeah.
Like you said.
What not to do.
Ragged edge.
Yeah.
And then it's a cool
ragged
story
edge.
to tell later.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just got to bank those for like in 20, 30 years when you might be on a podcast.
I might be on a podcast. Yeah, there might be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom, it's been absolutely amazing.
Oh.
This has been a great time.
Well, thank you.
I'm serious.
We had a lot of fun, too. Well,
we had a lot of fun and learned a lot of stuff. You've changed my thought process on so many things. And just listening to you talk and even before I got to the next thing, I'm like, damn, I can't ask that because he's explained it so well. You come into it. We talked about when Adrienne was on here, we've been in cars for 25 probably years. You look at the OEs and the designers, and so we talked about this on the GM Design Awards. That was like the getting close. You're like, oh shit, they actually let's see what we do.
I remember doing that.
And for so long, there's so much mystique and there's so much stuff that you put inside your head and you build up. And then I like to read a lot. I read all kinds of stories about history and the GM design and all designers, right? And stuff. And so hearing you talk about the humanity of it and really selling the team of it, it was a completely different than what I had in my head of, bunch of designers that want to build cool shit and we have to just be okay with what the suits want to do, and it's not that way.
Well, at least in my experience, it hasn't been that way. Certainly they had their opinion and believe me, we went through a period where it wasn't so easy, but I tell you, the person in my experience that really turned that around was Bob Lutz. He just made it so simple and set the priorities, which really guided the corporation into creating just a resurgence of wonderful product,
Yeah.
And the other thing I like to say relative to your question is, everybody sees this big giant corporation and this soulless corporation thing. I'm here to tell you the corporation is made up of is made up of thousands of people, and a lot of them are very small family. Really, they're families because you're with them a lot, and there's nothing like bringing out your true emotions than working around a car in a studio, because it's part of you. It's your every fiber. You're there in that room because that's your part of your makeup. And whether you get along with people or you disagree with people, there's still passion in there, and they're usually kind of small teams, small families throughout, the organization.
It's absolutely amazing. And Adrienne, your episode was amazing. This episode's amazing. And maybe we'll get the man behind the camera one day here soon, actually on here. People, I'm telling you what, people are going to be like, oh my God.
I bet he's got some car driving stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
May or may not have drag raced a cop.
Well, the English, you'll be good on the English before we do this one, right? All right. I can't understand half of those Australian words. I mean,
It's Avo.
Coming from a southerner who talks to the got peanut butter on the roof of his mouth.
Because in Australia, yeah.
Can I say one more thing? The other thing I will tell you, there's many. In the studio, at least in what I really pushed was, or what I really thought was very important was music. And in our studio, I always had music going, which inspired the whole team from Sinatra to Skrillex, and everything in between.
Wow.
You know who Skrillex is?
No, can you imagine that? Tame Impala?
That's a broad spectrum.
That's the whole spectrum.
We played broad spectrum. Go ahead. You say
I remember you picked me up in an avalanche one time to take me to tennis practice, and you were like, guess who this is? And you put on the William Orbit remix of the Limp Bizkit's version of My Way. And I was like, I was floored.
It's
incredible.
It's a great one.
That was our theme song for the 16, by the way.
Was it really?
Yes.
Since this one's just keeping on going, you just mentioned the avalanche. Whose idea of the avalanche? Was it the same as the El Camino, where they're like, you know what, it's cool with the truck. Let's bring the party inside. Let's flip that back seat down and bring all the cool stuff on the inside.
That came out of a kind of an internal think tank of vehicle concepts.
What did you put? What did you have to carry? That was
I wasn't part of that program. I was busy trying to figure things out in my own world.
That's funny.
But it was successful in its own right.
It was.
My dad had one.
Did your dad have one?
Personally, I don't understand it, but there were many people that did.
Avalanche owners are very committed.
Yeah.
I know.
How many back glasses do you think they resold after you broke them?
After you put some 2x4s through there?
Well, I always thought that the 20 inches that you needed extra in the bed, I just put it out the back. I don't need it to come into my cabin. Let's seal that up.
I will tell you, that was right in that period, early, mid-90s. Again, they set up a whole group or a whole department where you just explored and did architecture vehicle types. They went a super powerful kind of initiative to create new vehicle configurations. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see the think tank in the process of like, you know what, let's like this flip down and
where's a truck start? Where's a car? It was right in the era when crossovers were just starting to ramp up and people were trying, the Brat and the Aztec was part of that whole thing.
The Malibu Max that was one of your favorites.
Oh yeah, Malibu Max. Yeah, all these vehicles were all being explored by all these companies, and so there was a concerted effort to create. Could we reinvent or create a new vehicle type that would take the market by storm?
I'll tell you what, a pearl white
Mustang.
Cadillac EXT flip down back seat, whatever the Avalanche version of the Cadillac.
Oh, yeah.
EXT.
Yeah.
That was every single general contractor in the South, right, that built houses, you had to have that.
They've
right?
arrived. They've arrived. Right? Yeah.
Pearl white with the gold package.
So music was very important. So I kind of ran the stereo in there, and it really affected how the team, how we created. I figured one of the missions of a leader is to create an environment for creative people to do their best.
Could you pick up on the vibe and then change the vibe, play DJ?
I tried the best I could. I think I did pretty good. I'll tell you, when the sculptors would come in and somehow, because I'd start a playlist and it would get a little slow, they'd say, hey, this isn't nap time. You need to pick it up, Tom. And so I'd go over and fast forward or something, get like Fun-Loving Criminals or something, usually after work.
This man got some music knowledge. Wow.
Yeah. Those guys are awesome. Yeah. Or Black Keys.
Black Keys good. Yeah. Black Keys is great.
To me, they're the best garage band.
It's been absolutely amazing. I think we've touched. We can keep going. I mean, we're only at 3.5.
Oh my
We've
God.
gone.
You guys are gonna edit this, right?
We'll knock it down to 3:25.
You've said nothing worth editing, so no, this will be 3.5 hours long.
I'm sure I said some stupid things.
No, it'll be good. It'll be good. It's been amazing. We got to do it more often. Next time you're out here, come by and see the shop.
Oh, I will. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I will tell you this again. Going back, we're all back to building models or whatever. Going back around. This is. I mean, I've been whether it's been conscious or not. This is the vibe right here that's kind of driven me in my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of this culture, maybe a lot, in all the cars I've been involved with, consciously or subconsciously.
I'm buying a C8 tomorrow. I'm buying a C8 tomorrow.
There's some rat fink in that car. There's rat fink in every one of them. And a little bit of Harry Bradley. Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand Ferraris and all that. There's a little bit of Lamborghini. There's throughout the course of my career, but
I think it
to me, this is soul and there's so much heart, and it's what I was born with. I think
there's a little bit of Camaro and Mustang.
Yeah,
I think it's so important. I know that me and Phil are in awe of it, just having this conversation, right? But I think that it's going to be so important. We poke fun at ourselves about there's not many listeners, and there's a few. We're starting to get a little bit of shit. We got a lot of shit at SEMA about like. Stop discounting how many people actually listening from Canada. Stop discounting how many people. A lot of in Australia. I apologize to everybody in Australia. Right? There's a fucking shit ton of them. But I'm on a serious note. I think that it's so important for people that listen to this to understand that there's you and there's so many other passionate faces behind that GM corporate logo.
There is.
And that's where even we've been guilty of it as it's just a corporation, right? It's the same thing on a much smaller scale, right? On the Roadster Shop side. There's talented, passionate guys that build the things that you're buying. It's the same thing. That C8 Corvette that you're seeing, it came from you and a passionate team to design it. The C7, there's so many other things. We won't talk about the Pontiac Aztec. There's so many other cool ones that you've done.
Every designer going all the way back to Bill Mitchell's time.
It was
even
humans.
Harley Earl. All those people, men and women, were involved with the C8 design.
Yeah,
think about it. It really is because we're drawn upon, obviously the split windows, the icon, but what led up to that? It all builds. So you can auger down and you can find people, men and women that. Had every bit as much commitment and passion and agony and ecstasy as anybody else throughout that.
You're an extremely humble guy, and you give a lot of people credit.
That's true.
At the end of the day, you've got to.
That's true.
You've got. I know. I get it.
My brain is not that big.
There's something super special out of all the accolades and all the things that you've been a part of and the great designs and the great fucking pictures. That painting was amazing. Out of all that kind of stuff, there's something a little extra special knowing that you led the team to do the first mid-engine vet. There's lots of cool things. Yeah. That mid-engine has been tried, like you said, since the first. That's something that's cool, and it's pretty surreal.
Thank you. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the start.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Tom. Sure. Appreciate it, Adrienne.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
It's been absolutely amazing.
Thanks, Dad.
I love being here with my daughter and my wife.
It's been an amazing time.
Thank you.
We'll see you again next week.